Like to welcome everyone to our committee of the whole meeting. So this is the meeting where we sort of work in public. So our next meeting is next Wednesday. This is our last meeting before tomorrow's last day of school. I don't know if we have a couple of seniors here. You guys will be graduating tomorrow, so congratulations. Hopefully, the weather is. I think Dr. Harris over there is fixing the weather for us. So hopefully, cross our fingers, we will have good weather at 7 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and go from there. But I think it's looking good so far. So we're just in executive session. Can I get a motion to return to public session, please? Okay, thank you. Call to order. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Call to order. Opening statement. Meetings of the board are open to the public and all members of the community should feel free to participate. There are two opportunities for the public to speak. The first is at the beginning of the meeting for agenda items only, and the second is at the end of the meeting for other items. Any individual desiring to speak shall give his or her name, address, and the group, if any, that is represented. The presentation shall be as brief as possible, but no more than 3 minutes per individual. There are certain matters that may be brought before the board that cannot be immediately addressed in public. Such matters may be referred by the president to a board committee and or to the superintendent for consideration and or resolution. The board vests in its president or other presiding officer authority to terminate the remarks of any individual if he or she deems it in the best interest of those present to do so. Can we all stand for a flag salute? Pledge allegiance
to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, again, thanks everyone for coming tonight. We have a couple of presentations. I've always felt bad for the spring athletes because, as you guys know, the spring sort of ends, right? So if you have kids playing baseball, lacrosse, softball, all different sports, the year sort of ends, and sometimes you almost miss if some teams play too long, you don't get to them. So thankfully, we have one more day. So thankfully, at our meeting today, so I think we have some golf people in the audience today because the golf team won sectional championships for the second time in 3 years, I believe, which is pretty outstanding because we'd never won before that. So we beat the Rainey, the Rumson, and all the other kids, all the CBA, and all the other teams that usually win it before us. So no, we have that. I know we have some Beamline.
Yeah, we're going to talk all about it.
And a few other athletes, I think, track and field and things like this. So, Dr. Cascone and Mr. Cassell, the mic is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Apologies for the delay in getting to you. We appreciate your patience. So the first recognition that we're giving tonight, I'm happy to have Dr. Harris here with me. So I first became aware of this. I was actually at the HFEE trustees meeting. I want to say it was maybe the May meeting, and they were going over all of the mini grant applications that had been granted, and then they had presentations on what kind of came of these grants. And we actually had one of the members of the Beamline team, we'll talk a little bit about what that is, who had actually submitted a mini grant application to the HFEE for a particle detector. I learned through that presentation what that is and how it contributed to the work. And then lo and behold, we learned, some weeks later that our Beamline team, which is here tonight, and just so you know, the Beamline is a physics competition for high school students, and it's actually an international competition. It's organized by CERN, the European Laboratory for Particle Physics in Geneva, Switzerland. And so teams of high school students are invited to propose an experiment they want to perform at the beamline of a particle accelerator. So actually, our goal is to be, I think it's top 3. Right. So if you're a top 3 team, you actually get to go to CERN, right, and actually test your hypothesis. So that's what we're shooting for. But in the interim, we actually placed in the top 50 teams in the world, and really the particle detector. And my understanding is that was a significant contributor to the work you did, enabling you to actually not only come up with a hypothesis, but actually to collect real data to validate that hypothesis. So. Great example of collaborating with the HFEE. So 4,501 students contributed 712 proposals representing 89 countries. And our students who we're going to recognize tonight were the team that made this happen. And by the way, also before I call up the students, I just want to acknowledge the particle physics team club advisor, Mrs. Lee. Is Mrs. Lee here tonight? She's not. Well, we will recognize and thank her anyway. But certainly her leadership and mentorship were a big part of it. So at this time, I'm going to call the names. Dr. Harretz will present you with your certificate. And then if you would, because I'm sure you're really excited about taking a picture. So after you get your certificate, we just want you to come stand up here by the dais, and then we'll ask the board to come up and take a picture with you. So, all right. So our first student is Hafsa Osman. And Hafsa is a junior, so she will be back in action next year, and she was an integral part of the team this year as well. Victoria Rampula. Victoria? Brendan Lawler. And Ronan Kravchik. Board, if you would join us for a picture. How about one more round of applause? And so thank you and congratulations again, really making your community proud and putting Holmdel on the map even more than it already is. So Mr. Reddy's right, Board President Reddy is right. With when the spring season ends, typically the season is still ongoing, particularly because our teams are oftentimes in postseason play and making deep runs into the state tournament. So by the May board meeting, they're not usually done. And of course, we know if we were to do it at the June 24th board meeting, or on summer vacation. So you're not wanting to come. So this worked out perfectly with our committee of the whole tonight. And so we're recognizing, first, I'd like to invite Mr. Casala, our supervisor of athletics. And we're first going to recognize our boys golf team. So our boys golf team, South Jersey Group 2 sectional champions. I'm actually going to turn it over to Mr. Casala because he has a little bit more sort of anecdotal. Because my understanding is that sectional tournament was an exciting round. So, Mr. Casala, you can give us a little bit more information on.
Sure. All right, thank you, everyone. So, boys golf, second time in 3 years. 2 years ago was the first one. You were able to run it back this year. Outstanding job. Just give a little backstory. Golf teams, both boys and girls, but we're talking about boys, has consistently strong. Obviously, in my 4 years here, been dating back even before that. And this year, they were 8-7, so the record may not look like its previous years. But they did the divisions differently. So all the best teams were in the top division. And they compete in golf in tournaments. There's the county tournament, the shore conference tournament, et cetera. So we finished 9th in the Monmouth County tournament, 6th in the shore conference tournament. And all of those matter, but the big one is the state tournament. And the boys turned it on for their second South Jersey Group 2 sectional championship in school history. Congratulations. Uh, 2 years ago, when the boys won it, and some of them were on the team, our longtime coach, Coach Bemke, who's here, he does an outstanding job. He unfortunately had to attend his son's college graduation, and I got called in to pinch hit and coach the team that day, and there wasn't much coaching. I showed up, make sure we took the bus down, make sure all the kids had their clubs, and we rolled out on the course. They gave me an app to follow along. And I know golf, and on hole 17, and I'm like, we're winning. But I didn't want to jinx anybody. I didn't want to text him. And as happy as I was, I think we stopped at McDonald's or something on the way home. As happy as everybody was, coach was ecstatic. But I also felt bad because he's been the coach for so long and he wasn't able to witness it himself. But this year they didn't have to call me in. They proved they can win it without me. Coach Bemke, you were there and got to enjoy it. Congratulations to you too. All right, when we call you up, come on up. We'll give you your certificate and then we'll take a picture.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
If I could just say something, Coach Bemke's been the golf coach for years. Coach, if anyone knows him, fifth grade teacher in Indian Hill, outstanding teacher. I was golfing once a couple of years ago, and I think foursome ahead of us was from Manasquan or something like that. They're like, "Oh, you have Coach Bemke. Oh, that's the best coach in the shore, hands down by far." So, like Coach Devaney in basketball, he's known throughout the county, throughout the state, and year after year. So I'm as proud as anything to see it. 2 out of 3 years, and I know this year was such a sort of a choppy year. And then the boys obviously played well right when they needed to play well, and shocked the heck out of the rest of the state, and just awesome. So congratulations.
Okay, so without further ado, we will introduce and recognize the team. So first up, Coach Sean Bemke. Come on up, Coach. Morris Chang. Jishuan Cheng. Derek D'Imperio. Kenzie Mander. Remy Mander, who also, by the way, shot the low individual score at the Group 2 sectional championship. Gavin Mason. Connor Quigley. Ryan Quigley. And last but not least, Gavin Sharp. Board, would you come up and join us for a picture? One more round of applause for our championship, state championship boys golf. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I just want to add to that with the low individual. I already gave Remy his plaque, so he didn't have to come back up. But obviously, these are team tournaments, but then your scores are dictated by the individual performance. And Remy's been on the varsity team for multiple years at Holmdel, and he's strong, good golfer, and but man, he put together the round of his life at the right time in a high pressure spot. He won the entire tournament. So awesome job, dude.
All right, so our girls golf team has certainly made some noise in more recent history, not only here in the high school scholastic world, but also on the larger national stage, where we had a former high school golfer that was Gane first. Was it Sienna?
No, Serena was the younger.
Serena was so.
Mega.
So Mega Gane, former player here, won the national championship with Stanford in women's golf. So, fantastic job. But we're here to recognize the Monmouth County and Shore Conference individual champion, the winner of both of those tournaments, those matches, Diane Chang. And congratulations. You just come off the links? Were you on the golf course this afternoon? Nice. Of course you were. But we have to, in recognizing our girls golf program, we could not do that without recognizing Coach Bradley. So Coach Bradley, come up and join us. Coach Bradley was a former teacher. She's now living the good life, retired, but she continues to coach girls golf for us, and we're thrilled to have her on board. So, board, if you would, join us.
Just give a little shout out to the girls golf team as well. They finished second in Monmouth County, second in the Shore Conference, second in the sectionals. So they had an outstanding season as well. Great job. All right, now we're on to track and field. All right, Lucas Lund was not able to attend, but I think this is probably the 10th board meeting we're talking about Lucas for his outstanding career. Lucas will be participating in track and field at Cornell. But we are going to honor him for his spring accomplishments. In the triple jump, he was the Monmouth County champion, the Shore Conference champion, the Central Jersey Group 2 sectional champion, and then in all of Group 2, he finished second. So Lucas, outstanding career. All right, next up, we have, so when you're competing in track, similar to golf, there's team and individual components to it. Obviously, now we are at a field athlete. You compete in Monmouth County, Shore Conference, sectionals, and states. Colin did an outstanding job. He was the Central Jersey Group 2 sectional champion, and then in Group 2, he finished second place in the discus. Come on up. Congratulations, Colin. Colin Werner. I didn't say his last name. Nice shot. Good stuff. All right, and our last track athlete of the evening, we've called her name a few times as well. So we got Aylin Peters. Aylin, she runs multiple events, as you can see on the screen. She advanced in the sectionals in order to be eligible for the group championships. And although you don't see first up there, her body of work is so impressive, which is why we're honoring her. Aylin finished third in the 100, fourth in the 200, and second in the 400, which means she medaled in 3 events. Aylin Peters, come on up. Aylin also finished first place last weekend in the East Coast Championships. Nice job. This is the second meeting in a row that Coach Cole has shown up to support his student athletes, and I have forgot to mention him. Coach Cole has been our track and field coach for a long time. He does a great job. Coach, thanks for coming.
Yeah, I feel I should say something about Coach Cole as well. I know he's not really happy about that, but I feel obliged. I mean, I mean, the hours, I mean, all of our coaches put in a lot of hours, but for the track and field coaches, the venues that they travel to, Staten Island, Tom's River, there for hours and hours. And it is truly a labor of love for Coach Cole and the staff. I tell him that every opportunity I can get because he's always sharing the wonderful things and the accomplishments. And I always let him know that we were so appreciative of everything that he puts into it. So thank you, Coach. And that concludes the recognition portion of the agenda. We'll now resume. And so students, feel free to stick around, or if you want to get a particular seniors, you got a big day tomorrow. So feel free to take your leave as well. Thank you so much for coming out tonight.
We could take a minute while everyone leaves. Bring the weather.
What's the forecast look like?
Actually, I'll see you at the walkthrough. No, the temps have looked even up to 5 o'clock look nice hour by hour right now. So we're almost in the clear. Yesterday was not so good. Yeah, it's improving. All right, so we will continue. Item J is questions or comments from public on action items only. We're not going to do that because we don't have any action items only, so that will get knocked out. Action items. We don't have any action items. BOE liaison reports. We do not have any because our students are not here. They're done. Brings us to board subcommittee reports. Do we have any board? I don't think we met, no. And obviously negotiation we talked about in public or in private because that's an executive topic. Which brings us to old business. Does anyone have any old business? Oh, well, we'll talk about one that we have listed, which is the assessment feedback test return presentation on Mr. Howard and the CNI team. Mr. Howard, take it away. You could do it there if you want. You don't have to go into the mic. That's your call. Yeah, you got the clicker and stuff. I know this is one of your last presentations, so.
This is the one.
Okay, this is the last presentation for you. Only been here a couple of years, you know. Thank you, Art.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm going to do get over here so you guys don't have to look at my back. Assessment feedback and review practices. First, a little disclaimer before I get started. This presentation represents all the feedback that we got from stakeholders, the students, the board. We go over the current practices and also educational research. This is not my personal opinion as a presenter. I'm merely attempting to survive this because I'm retiring, on the 30th of June. And no tests were harmed in this report, although several of those reflection sheets have experienced some mild discomfort because they've been getting attacked lately. Organize and question what this whole thing came from. So we were looking at how can we ensure that the assessment review practices maximize student learning, because I think that's at the essence of it all, to maximize student learning while trying to balance the academic integrity, consistency, and parent access. So the sources of data that we use for this presentation, we got feedback from the Board of Education, particularly through the CNI committee meetings that we've done. Feedback from our supervisors and from our teachers. There was a survey that went out to the teaching staff that the supervisors helped me collect that data. There was a survey form that also went out to the students, grades 6 through 12. And we looked at some current educational research, did our own little research also, and we looked at best practices as well. So, addressing the assessment feedback questions. So, some of the key areas of inquiry that came about over the past year, basically the questions that were raised: student access to completed assessments, reflection practices, parent access to the assessment information, consistency of our review procedures across classrooms, and some of the actions that we've already taken as a district to try to better understand the practices. Again, like we surveyed the students, we collected feedback from staff, we did a review of educational research, and through our committee meetings, we examined the board and family concerns. So what we heard from the board, so there were several themes that kind of emerged from our conversations, and we've had quite a few of them. Parent access. So there were some concerns that were expressed that parents cannot effectively reinforce learning at home if they cannot access or see the assessments. The reflection sheets don't always provide enough information. Students are sometimes unable to explain what they missed, and practices vary significantly among teachers, right? So consistency seems to be the repeated identified concern. So some examples included, and this is from the input we got from the board. Some teachers weren't returning assessments. Some teachers do return assessments. Some allow online review. Some provide detailed conferences. Some use the reflection sheets kind of extensively, and reviewing assessments without students actually having a physical copy of the assessment was also some of the feedback that we received. So it seemed that the board's concern was not necessarily a specific practice, but just the lack of consistency across the classrooms overall. And feel free to pop in if you want. This is like interactive if I miss something, especially the people on the committee. So what our supervisors and our teachers told us. Well, the feedback also revealed some important findings. For the current practices, most teachers, they do provide written feedback. There were review assessments going on in class. They did conduct reflection activities, and they required students to either identify errors or set future goals for things that they got wrong on assessments. A key perspective that came out of those surveys from the teaching staff and from the meetings that the supervisors had with the teachers, that teachers generally support review practices. I don't think anybody don't, and they believe that the reflection can also improve student learning. Some of the challenges, though, that were identified from the surveys and the discussions with the teachers, first was time. That was probably one of the most frequent things that was said. They had the challenge was a lack of instructional time, and the teachers indicated that meaningful reflection sometimes require more time than is currently available. Student engagement. The students sometimes often complete the reflection activities just as a task to be finished rather than as a learning opportunity. Absenteeism, and from that, I mean, well, delayed assessment completion often postpones review and feedback. It's basically during assessments, the teacher said they experience a lot of students being absent when they're doing reviews. Sometimes students aren't present when they're doing reviews too, and that creates creates a disconnect in the learning cycle because some things have to be repeated, some things have to be redone again, and that affects in terms of time and properly going over assessments. And academic integrity. The teachers continue to express concerns about test security, the impact of AI, and the risks of assessments reuse. So what the students told us. Students' responses, when you looked at all the data, it kind of validated things that the teachers were saying, as well as things that the board had pointed out. I put just one of the charts up there that, the students consistently report that the most effective review strategy for them was getting the explanation straight from the teacher, seeing their mistakes in like real time, and then writing the corrections that they have to do. So collaboration in the classroom, talking to the teachers, that's what a lot of the kids said that they would prefer. That's how they generally learn and understand the things that they were getting wrong, and they prefer that over just getting like a score.
Hey, Art, what was your sampling there? You have 116 responses. Just high school, or was it more?
That right there was, I sent out it to the entire 7 through 12
Okay,
group,
so the complex.
but yeah, the complex. But that was pretty much after the second time I had sent it out, because I had went to Dr. Harrods and I wasn't getting a lot of responses from the high school.
Not
So that
surprising.
was the 116 from them.
Okay, thanks.
So here are some of the major students' concerns, and this kind of spread 6 through 12. And you can see that there's similarities between what they said that they're experiencing as concerns and some of the same things that the teacher said and some of the same things that the board members were and the parents were complaining about. Not enough time to review. They frequently reported that, they felt like the sessions were rushed and they would benefit from more time to kind of discuss these assessments. Limited access to the assessments. The students, Carlos, I think that's law. The students felt like the access they had to assessments were limited. Many of them expressed the desire to keep the assessments or review them longer and take them home so they could, look at it in more detail. Some said they had a difficulty understanding the feedback. They frequently requested more detailed explanations, clearer feedback from the staff, and more opportunities that they can ask questions. And interestingly, they said those reflection sheets kind of lacked meaning for them. They looked at it as a task that they had to do, as opposed as an opportunity to kind of do that metacognition. They did it because the teachers told them to do it, right? Which is basically what the teachers were saying. They felt like the students were only doing it because they were being told to do it. So we also took a look at some of the research, because in our committee meetings, some of the things that were brought up by the board was like, what does the research say? How can we, did we do any kind of deep dive into that? So I had the supervisors, they took a look at the research. John, if you're familiar with educational research, these names are not like new to you. John Hattie, Rob Marzano, Dylan William, and Marshall Levette. There was strong evidence that supported giving feedback in a timely manner. So if you have an assessment, you're not giving it back 3-4 weeks later. The quicker you get the assessments back to the kids and going over it, the better the information. Error analysis, metacognition, reflection on learning strategies, and structured feedback processes. There was really not a lot of evidence out there that supported just giving back the assessments improves learning outcomes. The research kind of was steered more so towards the quality of the feedback that the teachers were giving to the students and the amount of reflection that the students were able to do once they got that feedback from the teacher, as opposed to just getting the assessment back. Or even like the students said, just getting a score doesn't really help them. They rather talk about the things that they were doing, the assessments, what they got wrong, and have like more time to go over that kind of information. We did do a review of the assessments from 2024, 25, when they were getting assessments going back home, to 25, 26, when we instituted the no return of assessments policy. Like this is actually the first school year that that not given assessments have been put into place. When I took on the role of CNI director, we talked about this in the summer. So this is basically year one of this whole entire process. Some of the areas that we were looking at the data from was from math, ELA, science, and social studies. The current practice is assessments. Assessments are generally not returned. There's review and reflection based feedback.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
just to interject, major assessments.
Correct. And academic integrity focus. Right. Some of the performance results when looking at the review of those major assessments was there was stable, or improved performance in all of the core areas. ELA showed the largest increase. There was no decline in any of the content areas. And I put the little chart there in the bottom. I don't know if everybody can see that or not. But the key takeaway from all of that is that the available data does not really indicate that the current assessment review practices are negatively affecting the students.
But Art, can I just say,
Yes.
because I have thoughts in general, but on this particular, just because there's actual, like, we're looking at the change value here. So I agree that the takeaway is that it doesn't indicate a negative, but it also doesn't indicate a positive either. It's
Right.
really almost no change.
It's not
Because to
significant.
me, a statistical significance on my standardized testing has to be a 0.10, of which we don't have that.
Right. There's
Okay, so
no,
it's-
if you look at that p-value, there's really no
Right. So
significance.
it's not negative or positive.
Correct.
Right. So just to interject for a second. So, and just to clarify what the statistics come from, is I don't think it necessarily says that these are average, the mean scores on major assessments in the subject areas. So it's not inclusive of any of the quizzes or homework or any of the other things that go into the grade. And you're right. It's it's essentially a neutral value. But when we're talking about making a reversal of course on something that's been in place for a year, and there's a assertion that the not returning assessments is having a negative impact on student achievement. And it's not exactly like we're a high school that's not already achieving at high levels. I mean, we did our district assessment report in the fall. And when you look at our metrics, I mean, we're happy that our rankings are going up. I mean, not meteorically, but they're going up because our student achievement is going up, whether it's AP scores, whether it's basically our entire school passing the NGPA, SATs, all of the vast majority of our student achievement metrics are going up. Our four-year college admission rate, well over 90%. Our four-year completion rate, 85%. Anecdotal that we receive from students who come back, that they're well prepared for college. So I think that, when we think about like what's the lever for making an about face after 1 year, and I think we have to say, well, is the current practice adversely impacting our students? And again, this is one data set, right? So, but I think that's to contextualize it and how it contributes to a policy decision or what that policy decision will be.
All right, so what does this all mean? Okay, so the issue appears to be less about should assessments be sent home, but more about review practices implemented consistently and effectively. Like students want more time or access, better explanations. Teachers want better student engagement, also more time, clearer expectations, and parents greater visibility into student performance, better understanding of mistakes and opportunities to support learning at home. Some of the potential areas for continued work. This is based off of the stakeholder feedback, several areas that warrant further exploration. Professional development. This is something that the Supervisors were strongly recommending assessment literacy, feedback procedures, metacognition, student reflection, consistent review process, consistent assessment review procedures, and expectations that are implemented district-wide. Student voice, I think we still need to continue to gather student feedback regarding their experiences with assessments, come up with some helpful review strategies for helping them improve their learning, and try to tackle those barriers that are limit learning from assessments, and give them opportunities to kind of strengthen their engagement in reflection. Standardization, develop a clear district expectation regarding student feedback procedures, assessment review procedures, error analysis, reflection opportunities, and consistent implementation across classrooms. And of course, our parent partnerships, because we still need to figure out ways to explore strategies that increase understanding of student learning, provide info on assessment performance, and support the homeschool connection, collaboration, and maintain the academic integrity safeguards. So what we learned, that this evidence suggests that the primary issue, again, is not really whether tests are being returned, more so ensuring that students receive meaningful, consistent feedback that helps them learn from their assessments and should be the priority. So the recommendations that we have are intended to balance student learning, parent access, consistency, and academic integrity. So to wrap it up, based on this stakeholder feedback, surveys, current practices, and the research, we have the following recommendations. For K through 6, all the assessments should be returned. And if there are inconsistencies in that, then we're going to look into correcting those. For middle school grades 7 and 8, assessments are going to be returned at those grade levels with some exceptions, particularly those classes that lean more towards high school. And on the high school level, we're going to maintain the no return policy for now. The rationale is because of the high stakes matters of GPAs, college admission, and the concerns about selecting absenteeism or info gathering. We're going to focus on the second year of looking at the assessment and no assessment return policy at the high school level. And then 4, strengthen the feedback expectations regardless of the returns, making sure that returning tests alone just isn't enough, and that the teachers provide a structured review and clear paths for improvement. Which means that we're going to look at accountability and oversight to ensure that the feedback procedures are being followed, supervisor support and monitor, periodic review of implementation, some feedback focused kind of walkthroughs, and follow up when expectations are not being met. And of course, the professional development piece about it, reestablishing a grading practices team, including teachers and administrators, to refine grading expectations, improve assessment literacy, and ensure consistent feedback practices. So the overall strategy, we're going to modify the test return policy by developmental level, return K through 8 assessments, protect high school major assessments, and implement a clear plan for feedback improvement, monitoring, and accountability. And that's it. And
Art,
have any questions?
thank you, Art. Yeah, I just want to thank you and the team. I think you did some great work here, but I just want to give some insight to the board and the community on kind of what my role was in this. So I communicated to Mr. Howard and the supervisory team, I think it was last week, and it was a pretty direct email. I said, I need to be convinced why we're not walking this back entirely. Now, of course, it's been a long year, so I I was erroneously stating that we had been in 2 years of no test returns when it's actually just been one. And that we had been really drilling down on these feedback practices for 2 years when it's really just been one. And my lines of questioning, and anyone who was in that meeting can attest to the fact that it was a very direct line of questioning, was, how are we, to me, if we're going to stand behind this, even a partial maintenance, we need to speak in public about how next year is going to be different from an accountability standpoint, plain and simple. We cannot have a second year where there's inconsistency, right? Because I do agree with the fact that, returning a test in the absence of consistent, robust feedback processes and feedback loops in the classroom, it's hit or miss as to whether or not that's going to do anyone any good. And it really depends upon the extent to which they're reviewing it, the extent to which they have support at home. So that's really, that number 5 to me is really number 1. Like there cannot be inconsistency. And when that inconsistency is observed, it needs to be addressed and promptly. And that to me is the key piece to this. I do think, and we can make arguments that, an AI is a double-edged sword, right? So while AI has greatly undermined integrity, by the same token, you would make an argument that it is a robust tool in the hands of teachers to do different types of assessments. But to me, the integrity piece is still very real. We have data, that we've collected informally where we've had some teachers that have kept track of the number of absences in their classes when they have assessments. In one particular case, I believe Ms. Lauder shared that she had 200 absences, 200 cumulative absences on major assessment days. So I was sort of skeptical about the selective absenteeism concept at first, but it's a very real thing that's happening at the high school. And on top of that, the intel gathering process that occurs after assessments are administered and before a student retakes it is very real as well. And so when we're talking, what ultimately made me feel comfortable about 7-8 is there are some stakes there, but we're not talking about GPA, class rank, college admission. Those are very real stakes. But essentially, we're giving it one more year to get it right. And I made that clear. One more year to get it right. And, but I think it's also important to note that before we put in this consistent practice, since time immemorial in Holmdel High School, students were suffering from grave inequities. There were teachers that were giving them back, and there were teachers that were not. And that was up until last year, 24-25, that was happening. Nobody was talking about the inequity of that, right? That persisted since this high school was #1 in the state and all these other things. That was happening. So on some level, we have at least controlled for that. I think we have made great strides with respect to the assessment practices. And so this is a middle way, if you will, as opposed to a complete about face after 1 year of implementation. So I'll pause there.
So if I could jump in.
No, not yet. I'll go first. I have the mic. I have the gavel. This topic has come up for a bunch of years. So Art, first, thank you. I think it's a good topic to have a conversation with just because it has come up. It's real. It's real with parents. We have 3,000, close to 3,000 students. I mean, when I saw your survey of 100-something students within the complex responding, it tells me what I think I already know, that it's sort of like, it's not that big of a deal to the students. I know this. My two boys graduated, did very well here. And I know all these kids that have graduated as well have all done well. So I don't think it's a big issue. I agree with Dr. Cascone in a big way that it's consistency. Because I know a lot of the teachers, as you probably know, some give tests back, others don't, a little slower based on time. I think everything you hit on here is spot on. I think it's more an administrative issue, way less a board issue. This is the area where it comes in. We hire the superintendent, we set the budget. This comes into the gray area where I don't want to say micromanaging, but where we're literally, this is not our realm. It has never been our realm, and it shouldn't be our realm. It's good that we talk about it. We're all allowed to have opinions. 9 of us do. I think returning the tests, does it help? I can tell you my kids are in college. They don't get tests back. So if they, this helps prepare them. I think they learn better when they learn what you made wrong. So Dr. Cascone and Kim, we've had long discussions about this last couple of weeks. I think it's a good thing that we're, I guess, circling back on it get back consistency again, making sure that across the board, teachers give them back. I can tell you what Dr. Cascone said. Absolutely absenteeism. I know for a fact. Wait, you're not going to school tomorrow? Why? Oh, I got that big test. These kids know how to game the system. They know how to play the system. We give those tests back in high school, even though you could easily switch them with AI. Oh, trust me, these kids are smart. Will try to gain every advantage they can. And as Dr. Cascone said, it's time memorial. They've been doing this. So my thing as one of 9 board members, I'm going to support the administration wholeheartedly here and not put my personal opinion, what I think of not, or this is more your paid to do thing than it is the board to set this. I think we're going down a slippery slope where we don't really belong personally based on what our charter is. So I'll open up. I know Joanne, you were first, so have at it.
So just to comment on your comments, I know when we spoke, you and I, in the beginning of the year, and I said, hey, this is something that's important to me. I want to bring it up. I don't know when to bring it up or when's a good time. And you said you should absolutely bring it up as old business. It's come up in the past, and in principle, you did not disagree with me when you and I had a direct conversation. So I will say that, and then I'm going to go into my comments.
Well, I'll
So-
respond to you on that. I was like, yeah, I agree in principle, but again, I don't think it's my decision. I think it's good getting tests back. Do I think it changes things? I don't, and I think the documentation sort of shows it. But yeah, I think it's good to review when you make things wrong, because how can you get better? If you can't fix your mistakes, how do you know what you did wrong? And I think that's where the consistency and the supervisor feedback and making sure the teachers are doing what they're supposed to be doing across the board is such a key point.
I am fully on board with returning or reviewing, I should say, and strictly saying that returning of tests in the absence of meaningful review, I think is not that effective, but I'm talking about in tandem, not handing the test back without review. So with that, I want to fully acknowledge that the inconsistency is not solely on the teachers, whether we're talking about scheduling conflicts, absences, et cetera. What I do want to say is there has been a lot of feedback from different students and parents who have spoken to me that report that it's inconsistent and often ineffective. Students are required in some cases to schedule review sessions during lunches in classrooms where they cannot eat, and parents who want to review a test must meet with teachers during school hours, also an impractical requirement for many working families. So one of the main objections that we do hear of returning tests is the added workload for teachers. However, as we mentioned, current AI tools can quickly generate multiple versions of assessments, reducing the burden of creating these tests. So I know college professors who are also utilizing these tools. On the topic of concerns about cheating, absolutely understanding, but in the history of time, students who are determined to cheat will likely find ways regardless. And, not to pick on Princeton, they're also in the news right now, and we're talking about the top levels of education. So even if the cheaters obtain the entire question bank, are they not, in essence, already studying? So honest, hardworking students should not be denied access to return tests that could help them better understand, retain, and build on concepts, especially in cumulative subjects such as math. So I do support adopting a formal policy to govern and return the tests so that it's not one person's decision, or it could be flip-flopped from year to year. And I would like to implement a timeline in time for next school year. Thank you.
So I have some just comments and maybe questions and or things that when you look at for implementation for next year, as far as consistency that I'd like to be addressed. So number one should be is a question, which is the reflections, which all the data shows that reflection works, right? So I'm on board with the reflection. My question is, should they be graded?
No.
So you have teachers grading that. So I would like that put into when you're talking about guidelines for this and in the professional development piece, can we make that clear to teachers that it should not be graded?
Agreed.
Okay. So that,
Wait, students get graded on the reflection of the
Yes.
test
yes,
as like a minor assessment?
yes.
Interesting.
Okay. So thank you for that clarification. The next thing that, in the grading guidelines, part of that consistency and think, which I think has been extremely successful because, you had certain teachers giving 2 majors, some 4, some 6, right? So that was also part of this that wasn't even mentioned, right? That when we looked at consistency, it was that, so there was a minimum number of minors and majors, which I think has been very successful. That being said, part of those guidelines were also looking at a timely input. There were guidelines for staff members on a timeline that after an assessment, when it needed to be inputted and returned. That is definitely not being checked. And you can go through a whole nother unit and have an assessment before the previous one has even been given back, which for some units, right, that might not build on one another, it's fine. But for other classes, it's cumulative build, right? So that would matter. So I think I would like to see from an administrative standpoint, I don't know that we talked about implementing whatever that new system was to help look at Atlas. Thank you. If that's something that, that supervisors can go in and look at, but I would like that as a piece for the supervisors to pay more attention to. Are these things timely being done? Because I think that's important. And then, one of the things that we've also been talking about is online assessments. Well, being on the computer less, right? That's one of the themes that we're all talking about. I think a lot of what I'm seeing is an increase across the board, not just the high school, of using assessments that are online. And one of the more recent things that I had happen at Indian Hill was, but it's also been an issue for my own daughter when she's complained, like, with Delta Math or this, that, whatever. She's like, but if it was on paper, I would have gotten partial credit for it, right? Because I did everything, but a decimal point was wrong and I would have gotten half credit. I would have, but you don't get that with these online assessments. And then with something it was English, actually, the question in particular was pick 2 things, right? Pick 2 things that were true and my question to the teacher was, did you, if they got 1 right out of the 2, do they get partial credit? The teacher didn't know, right? So they don't even know how it's being graded because it's just it's just spitting out a grade. So I would like to suggest that number 1, when we talk about limiting the use in general of the electronics, that maybe only a certain number of majors can be online assessments, because I think, that some of it does, we need to look at getting back to some basic paper and pencil, right? Because again, partial credit is a thing in all real world assessments. And then there was one other thing that when we talk about assessments, is the relation to, is that all major assignments? So in English, it might not be a test, it could be a major essay, right? I know for a fact at the high school that we have essays not being returned not even being reviewed. And it's like, sorry, it's already in the trash. And that's like, how do you learn how to write better if there isn't feedback there? So I think that, clarification that you might not return if however you move forward with the high school, essays should always be returned, period. I want feedback on the essay, period. So
also just when in speaking with Dr. Cascone, I know you're saying it's 1 year versus 2. So initially I had 2, but even within the 1 year, when we spoke very candidly, it was admitted, you did admit that the return was very inconsistent and the enforcement was tough. You're not going into every grade, every class and checking if it's done. So if it's in policy that it needs to be returned, and arguably at the high school, you do have a drop off of parents possibly being more involved at that level, but at the younger levels, for sure, parents want to be involved. And arguably across the board is equally important, not only for parent participation in the younger grades, but in the higher grades is when you're talking about the really hard cumulative subjects that, if we're worried about extra versions of tests, AI addresses that, and also the cheating, that's going to be in the way regardless. And maybe we can also take a look at our policy on absenteeism as it pertains to tests. I mean, I think that's a better way than penalizing the entire student body who want to learn from their mistakes on tests.
Sure. I'll just color that a little bit, just because, there was a former board member that used to talk about, the board's role is not to administer the district, but to ensure that it's effectively administered, right? And that's a delicate dance, isn't it? And policy is, of course, one of the ways that a board can kind of put their stamp on how the district is administered, right? If not through the policy, maybe the corresponding regulations. So insofar as, and so you think about like, could it be a policy, a standalone policy on assessment return? Kyle, I suppose it could. I mean, the board has the authority to promulgate any policy
I
they so
would say
choose.
yes. I mean, again, you're absolutely right that it becomes a gray area of when you go too far. So I could envision a policy that goes too far and raises potential concerns, but conceptually, I don't see, as long as you're talking broad strokes, anything that would prohibit the board from adopting a policy on those lines.
So, and oftentimes we agree, right? As an administration and board, I think generally we're relatively well aligned, but that's not to say that there aren't times when the recommendation of the administration is not aligned with the majority board view, right? So the good news about having this conversation now is that it's June, and this school year is not even over. We have, a couple of months. We have a board retreat. We have board goal setting. We have policy meetings. So insofar as, we can ascertain based upon this conversation, what is the majority will of the board? Is there a majority will of the board to promulgate a policy with regard to test return, and that to make that the official stance of the board? We could certainly do that. That's something we can discuss further, for sure.
Can I say something? I'm back on Zoom. Dr. Kolor here.
Yes, Sarika.
Okay, great. I had gone away between 7 to 8 because there's another meeting to attend to, but I wanted to, say my piece about returning test results. I was privy to hearing this conversation and commentary last couple of years. We've been going back and forth, and we've had several presentations. But personally, I think it is the right thing to do, returning the test results. I can't imagine parents who want to help the children, us saying that, no, they shouldn't be able to help the children. If parents are helping children and children are learning from them to some extent, it's good for their growth. It's really nice that they want to help. And if parents don't want to help, then, they don't have to ask for the test to be returned. And if parents do help in the growth, then it actually saves the teachers time, and the teachers are short of time. As we all know, we have fewer teachers because of budget constraints. They have more students now to deal with. And if there are a few students who they don't have to sit with, but clearly if they have 26 students now, as opposed to 22, and they have to sit with all 26 students to go over the test to see where they went wrong, it's a lot of burden. And now if at least 10 students are getting their work done by the parents, it's good for the teachers. The other argument, I know we have talked about cheating, and then they have to give different versions of tests. And that I can say from my husband's experience, he teaches at Columbia. He creates tests for master's students. And he was telling me, I'm quoting him, that with AI, you can get different versions of the test. And I was asking him, isn't that still like cheating? Because if you just because they change the name or the instances, the concept, the test shows that they're testing the same concept. He said, regardless, we're all testing the same concepts. Doesn't matter what it is, we're testing the same concepts, and the AI gives different scenarios, making it look different, which is what teachers do anyway. So I think with the AI, we can generate different versions of similar tests and making it equally difficult for students, but easier for teachers. And the other thing was, last time we said not many parents requested for test results to be returned, but now we're seeing a flurry of emails from parents asking for test results to be returned. So based on all this, I think they should be returned at all grades. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Sarika.
Right.
I'm
Allison.
gonna just quick. I think I'm supportive of the administration because this is not, this is like kind of like what Pete said. It's not my lane. It's not, I didn't go to school. I'm not an educator. And I feel like if the data showed a precipitous drop or anything in terms of results, but I like the adjustment from the K to 6 just because that's such foundational years.
It's really K to 8.
Or K to 8, I'm sorry. More foundational years. I think the parents are just generally more engaged, especially at the early elementary level, right? I feel like if the data showed worsening results, I could understand, but I'm going to trust the administration's kind of semi-pivot here to say K to 8, you get these tests back. And see what next year holds. And then we see what that data shows for a longer period of time. I think that's a better way to make some informed decisions. But again, not my area of expertise, so I'm trusting them and their judgment. And I'm a data-driven person, so if the data showed something different, I might have a different opinion.
Like, I think the bifurcating as far as the high school level, I mean, for me, once it gets to the high school level, it's over my head. So I don't know. I got like I couldn't help my kid if I wanted to. So I'm out anyway, but.
And I think at some
However,
point, like independence here.
But it wouldn't affect you though, Kim. If you don't want the results back, it's fine. If some parents do want to be involved, they can do it.
I agree.
Right. It's the
I am
parents'
just saying, for
choice.
me, I don't get it.
Right.
Like,
So, and if the community wants it, as several people have spoken about it, and the parents who do want to do it, why deny them the opportunity? The data doesn't show that. I'm not sure whether it shows that people, if parents do want to get involved, do those students do worse? I don't understand that from the data.
Sarika, when Art was doing his presentation, the data he showed it to be sort of negligible.
That's
the results
fine.
didn't change either way.
That's good.
And I agree with what Allison was saying, what Kim was saying. Like I recall my son when he was taking AB calculus. I don't remember that from 30 years ago. Or Dr. Keller in physics, or Miss Shode in biology or whatever. Am I going to know that stuff? Not really. Am I going to know the core stuff from K through 8? Probably more likely. But I just think I don't think it's a whole community. I'll say for sure it's not a whole community because I get the emails from the whole community with Dr. Cascone. I would argue to say it's less than 25. Dr. Cascone.
May I just ask? It's not for the whole community. It's for parents
it's not
who
whole
want to
community.
get involved. If you don't want to do it, it's fine. But if it shows no difference at all, not detrimental, not advantageous, but the people who do want to do it, why deny them? And if you don't want to do it, it's fine.
I don't necessarily subscribe to that we have to get 300 emails, right? Like I said that
Right.
to my team the other day. I said, I could get one email, and if it's a good point, then that's one person that's made a really good point that we have to take a look at. To me, it's more about, the sort of the abrupt start and stop of, it was a decision that was not made without some deliberation. It was a decision that was made not without some eye on the research. And in making a decision, ultimately a decision as a superintendent, whether we're going to about face 1 year after doing it, I have to consider a lot of different factors. Which is what led me to the decision about sort of a middle way, but with very clear expectations on what needs to happen this year. And you're right, Kim. And I'm the first one to say, like, I think we've done a lot of good work here in the last 4.5 years, but I think this is one area where we've needed to be much better. We set out 3 years ago with this strategic plan to establish consistency. And in some ways we have, but we're not nearly as far along on that consistency as we should be. And I'm willing to say that publicly that we have not met the mark where we expected to be 3 years in. So there are a lot of things that go into my decisions as a superintendent, as a reversing course. But again, this is it's not an exact science, right? And again, as previously shared, there is, jurisdiction within the board. And I'm not going to It's not be any, I'm not going to feel any disrespect, administratively, as the administration, if there's a consensus opinion of the board, you feel strongly about this and strong enough about this, even with seeing the data and some of the things that we've talked about doing next year, if you felt like notwithstanding the data, notwithstanding what the administration has indicated will happen next year, we feel we just need to have this. Well, at the end of the day, we serve at the will of the board. So, but this is our recommendation based upon a lot of different factors in running the school district.
I
So-
kind of think that, that we also should be kind of mindful of the language that we're speaking. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with like the word deny. I mean, it's really, you're talking about access over ownership. Parents want more access to the test to help their children. And from the survey results from the teachers, they're not opposed to providing that access. But
That's great.
but if we kind of ignore some of the concerns that they have, we're not really solving any problems. Same way we shouldn't ignore the concerns that the parents and the community has. So we got to find a better way of providing that equilibrium. Scott's right. It's not a pure science, but we're not on opposing sides. I mean, I didn't hear anything that the parents said or the students said or the teachers said that were in complete opposite of each other. We just really have to find a way to collaborate and work this out together as a group. I don't think any teacher, I mean, these teachers are the hardest working cats this side of the pay code. So I don't think any teacher wants to deny any parent anything. We just have to find a better way to address those things that are making it difficult. So we don't paint stuff with a broad brush. You know what I mean? So I think that everything that Kim said is, I'm saying, I don't think anybody disagrees with you. We just have to find a way to do it with fidelity. So we don't get into this rabbit hole of access over ownership.
So I find this whole conversation extraordinarily frustrating. Last year, when this got brought up, I had thought that access we weren't going to give the test back directly, but that the parents and the students would have access almost equivalent to that. And it seems like it didn't happen because, we needed a more thoughtful approach. And so, and my belief is one way is never the best way, right? It's going to be a blend to find the right formula to find the success, right, that we're all looking for. This year the results didn't, I guess, that's why the results didn't happen. That's why we're having this conversation again. My suggestion is, and I use the word trust here, it's maybe too strong of a word, but I think we lost trust of some people in the community based on what happened here, that we're talking about this again. So my suggestion is that we bring in a focus group of some of these parents, that they're involved in some of these standards so they understand if we move forward with this suggested path, right? Get some feedback in so they're part of forming this policy and the procedure of whatever this is going to look like. And so we have buy-in from the community, and then we can move forward together. Because if we do this again next year, we present results and it still doesn't satisfy the community, where we lost another year. So why don't we just bring them in now into the process? And I think everyone's eyes will be opened in different ways if we're doing it together.
I like that. I wanted to ask, because all I keep hearing is the concern of absenteeism and intel gathering. That's the negatives of returning the tests. So I'm curious, what have we done as an administration to help teach the teachers, or help the teachers, right, fight against that, right? Because to me, it just sounds like that's the only negative of returning the test with the reflection sheet, right? We just don't want them to cheat, right? Or we want them to show up the day of the exam. So I guess, have we come at the problem from another way, where we're helping them or requiring them to have multiple versions of a test, or, right? Like, because this problem's not going to go away, right? So just curious what we've done.
I think that's part of what, we're talking about, a solution to address just those types of things, right? I know that the supervisors, they, in their meetings with their grade levels or departments, those things are discussed. There's been a big push on trying to have conversations about providing consistent feedback. But if you're asking us, has everything been 100%? I think I know you know me well enough to know I ain't going to sit up here and lie to you. It hasn't been. So these are the kind of things that we have to work on, as an administrative team to make sure that those things are addressed so we can help the teachers do it.
Yeah, and just kind of in to some extent, and maybe in more direct response to the question, I mean, I think that no, we haven't really been focused on addressing because we haven't been returning the tests, right? So in some ways, not returning the tests has lowered on the list of priorities these things you're talking about. If we were to again return the tests, then we would have to start thinking about how are we attacking selective absenteeism? How are we? And by the way, my understanding is that there are multiple versions of tests. But those kinds of conversations have been sort of taken off the table because in a lot of ways they've been addressed by, and I'm not exactly sure how you really address selective absenteeism. I mean, we can look at it, but that hasn't really been a topic of conversation. We've been focused more on the feedback practices themselves than anything else.
Well, I would imagine that if you have multiple versions of the test, so the scheduled day of that you're supposed to have it, if a kid is absent, you have another version for that second sitting, if there's a group of them.
Mhm.
And then if there's a third day that like these kids are still out, and then after 3, you can't take it anymore. I think there should be some repercussion to the people who are actually the violators versus, it's just a general policy that the people who are adhering are missing out on certain aspects of review. So, I mean, I don't think that, I don't want to say
Just so you know, like at the high school level, I'm just going to say at the high school level, the issue becomes labs. So like when they're making it up is during lunch, right? Like that unit lunch, the issue is labs because so they might be giving it to these two students, like, so let's say they're absent on Monday, the students A and B can take it on Tuesday during that lunch, but the next, C and D, they can't do it on the Tuesday because they have lab, so they can do it on, and they have lab maybe on Wednesday too. So now they can, so like labs become an issue that now it's spread over. Like what I've heard is that it could be spread over 2 weeks.
I hear what you're
sometimes,
saying.
which is crazy. And that's an issue.
But I would argue that that's the exception and not the norm. If you're talking about the whole population of everything we're talking about, right? I mean, we could try to find a creative, viable solution to that as well. I mean, that's not, I don't know. I feel
Also just setting policy based on cheaters, right? Instead of just, right?
It's like,
So it's kind of like, what are we,
it's
I don't know.
punishing
I just
the
didn't hear
many
any
for the
other
sins of the
negative.
few. I don't know. There is a saying out
Right.
there somewhere
Okay.
about it, but
So, as a superintendent, in some ways, I walk a similar road as you do as the board, which is that I'm sort of, I'm looking at things mile high. I'm not I wouldn't consider myself a micromanager, but I certainly, when things come up, I ask difficult questions. And I also have to be balanced in when I'm getting a recommendation from the people that are doing the work every day, that if I say we're not doing it that way anymore, that just as when a year ago I confidently defended this in public, I also have to have a really clear and 100% resolved reasoning for basically telling the people who are doing this work on the daily basis, sorry, you feel that way, we're just not doing it that way, right? So it's a real delicate balance. And ultimately, which is how we arrived at this, at where we are now, which was really essentially a recommendation from our curriculum instruction team that give us another year to get this right. So, I could have either said yes or no to that question, and I ended up saying yes. And again, if the board ultimately, disagrees with that decision, I'm not going to take it personally. If the board, again, the majority of the board felt that this district's policy, if you will, should be that we return tests always, then, we'll pivot more to, okay, how are we spending time with teachers and giving teachers time to make multiple versions of tests? Of course, by dedicating that time to the production of additional tests. And let's not overstate the utility of AI. that it's some sort of magic bullet, because first off, we know that you have to check everything that comes out of AI with a fine-tooth comb. We know there's hallucinations, so that needs to happen. That information still needs to be transcribed to another format. So there is work there's hours that are associated with creating multiple versions of tests, even with AI, for every single unit. And so what we're doing then is we're taking time, and we're dedicating our department time, our professional development time, the teacher planning time, to creating multiple versions of tests, as opposed to the other work, which we know we need to do, which is in the area of overall assessment, literacy, and feedback practices. But that would be the pivot.
In that area, I can just tell you from my husband who creates these exams that according to him, I specifically talked to him about this, that it is easy now. He has to just still check a few things, but it has become significantly easier. I just want to share that with you.
But Dr. Kalura, how many assessments in a college class is a professor giving? They're not giving 5 major assessments every 10 weeks.
These are for exams. These are for exams.
Well, I understand that, but we're not talking about a midterm and a final in a college course. We're talking about 4 or 5 major assessments every marking period. So we're talking about, if you take 5 per marking period, that's 20. And if you're talking about doing 3 or 4 different versions, you're talking about developing 65 or 70 different versions of tests. And that I'm just telling you, it's not going to take hours and hours, but that is an investment of time. And we would just, if we pivot to we're giving them back, then our focus inevitably in the time that we have with our teachers is going to move away from, because we only have so much time, it's going to move away from professional development on effective assessment, effective feedback delivery, and effective assessment design. And it's going to be, all right, well, we know you need hours of time to create multiple versions of tests. And that's what you're going to do with your time, because you need to do that to preserve the integrity of the test. So I'm not saying right, wrong. I'm just stating a fact that time would need to be dedicated to do that.
And I think it's also important, we're telling our students we have an AI policy about use of AI. So then we're telling our teachers to not do the work and just rely on AI.
Well,
Granted,
but I
it's a
do
guardrail.
think they're
not-
using AI to grade
It's not
tests
true.
and stuff
Yeah.
too. So I do think AI is definitely being used by teachers.
Yeah, I think
I'm not discounting the fact that it's
No.
being used, but just
No,
to
they're
create
not
one
using
test and
AI
have them
to
recreate 4 more.
Right, but that's what they do. They use the concepts that they want to test, the concept that they want to test. They have different versions of it. So this is not cheating with AI. But
No.
I mean, one other question is, what about returning the test after a certain period? When this whole test repeat, this after 2 weeks or so, why not then?
And the other thing is too, we're kind of talking about this like we're recreating the wheel and like we don't have any test banks. I mean, this has been 1 year that it's been reversed, that no tests have gone back. We still have all of that. They didn't all go in the fire, right? So we have all of these things where they're not literally starting from scratch and creating 60 version of tests. I mean, we're kind of making it sound like this onerous thing where between AI has only advanced in the last year or two. So even if you have to have AI spot check and then you spot check, we're only talking about a handful of versions. We're not talking about, making this a full-time job. So, I mean, I really feel like for what we're hindering this on or, hinging this on it. And also our teachers have a second professional period that most districts don't. So
It's true.
All right, I think we're done with this topic for now.
Well-
I think we've had a good conversation. As board president or one board member, I support what you guys are saying. I think meeting in the middle for the K-6 assessments at a middle school is a good start. Staying with the consistency, whoever's sitting in arts, or our new CNI director who will be here in a few weeks, I believe.
July 1.
She'll have this will be, front and center on her plate. She'll know where she needs to go and look at it. But I think that's a good start, because I think it's, like I said, I've had 2 high school students, and I don't think this is a super high priority for the board personally, in terms of, like, you've seen the data that Art has shown us that getting tests back has not improved test scores, have not improved college acceptances. It hasn't, and I don't think it's going to. So I mean, we could fix it and address it. I think this is a good step in the right direction, and obviously, I think staying on top of it is a smart thing.
isn't the control group 116 people? Is that what we're saying? Is that the population we surveyed?
In total,
Yeah.
it was 116 for that
Right,
Okay.
out of about 100, out of about what, 1,500 in the
Right.
complex, give
So
or
I
take?
don't think that's reflective of the whole population. It's always a sample size, but I mean.
But that tells you that the onus, I can argue, I can infer from that, that it's not a big problem for them. It's not a concern of theirs. If it was, you would have saw 700 there. You would see as many people in the audience if it was that big of an issue. It hasn't been. We can argue that it is, but it isn't.
So I, just because obviously, it's my job. Sorry, do you mind?
No, you're good.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm a big believer in ongoing conversation, right? I mean, many of the issues that we deal with in education they're not cut and dry. I wish they were. Oftentimes we emerge from conversations, there's perspective given. I mean, there've been multiple points that have been made in this conversation that I think are interesting, right? Some of them pretty straightforward and right? Dr. Kahlur said, why don't you just wait 2 weeks to give it back? I'm like, how did we not think of that one, right? So,
But how is that not timely then, right? Then it gets into.
well, I mean, I think I think they would get the feedback.
on the
They'd get the feedback before 2 weeks, but then they would wait until all students
Tests have been taken.
have been taken, and they would. So I think there's more to talk about. And listen, anytime, like I've said time and time again, we're here to serve the will of the community whenever at all possible. Even though we've received 20, 25 emails, I've always believed that that's probably representative of a larger number of people who probably feel that way, who just aren't reaching out, or some that aren't necessarily engaged, but probably would feel that way if they were paying attention. And that's not a criticism. It's just a reality. And we obviously have several members of our board who feel strongly in opposition to what the administration, for lack of a better word, to what the administration is suggesting. So I think we have to keep talking about it. I think the good news is that we have time to continue to talk about it. And it's okay that we didn't draw a line in the sand today and say, this is absolutely what's happening. I think that's the value of these meetings, of these committee of the whole meetings that we have in public with members of the public here. So Peter, Mr. Reddy's right. We have our new curriculum director starting. I'm very interested in hearing what her perspective is on it and giving her an opportunity to meet with our C&I team, listen to this meeting and some of the feedback that's been brought forward. And we'll continue the conversation. We have the time to do that.
We're also
Right.
going to hear from some of the members of the community. So, and not that that's going to be a back and forth conversation. We're going to listen. But, and my suggestion is, perhaps coming out of what we hear and the emails and our discussions now, that perhaps it ends up on the board retreat as a discussion for a possible, goal for this, for our next year, and one of that might be to create a maybe at that time we have consensus that we have a majority of the board that wants it as board policy. Maybe we'll, so as far as perhaps tonight, right now, we don't, we can move on to the next thing, but it's not going to be, I want to hear what everyone else has to say that's here from the community. And then we can, perhaps talk about it in our July meeting, which is now going to be a retreat, to see what our next possible steps and what the consensus of, we're missing a couple members of the board, and we can all talk about it for, whether or not we want it to be policy. And then.
So just one final comment
Yeah.
to that. In multiple conversations that I've had with various people here, my understanding was that if we had majority, then we were going to bring it up at tonight's meeting, and then that it does take 2 separate readings to get it into policy if it's going to be implemented in time by next school year. And I thought the first reading would be in July and the second reading would be August, where the vote would happen. And that's the timeline I was told. So if we're shelving it, and I won't be at the retreat, I actually am not going to be around that week. I did already let Dr. Casco know, but if we shelf it, then, and there's not enough time for 2 readings, then what does that look like? Because I was very clear in asking what the process was to get it done if implemented in September.
Well, I mean, I would think that yes, to be a board policy, it does have to have 2 readings. That being said, the current practices in place are not board policy. So we can, correct me if I'm wrong, right? But we can come up with a consensus for what we would want it if it's looking like we're going to, let's say, have a first reading in August, that as a policy, if the majority of the board wants to set it as a policy, even if the first reading is in August, that would still, we could still be having that in place for September as far as like, right, like we have, what's there in policy right now as far as administratively, it's not a board policy, but it's still in place.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think it's right that it's a July and August timeline, right? Because we need to have that baked so that when we bring our staff in, for the opening days, we can roll that out. So here's what I'm, insofar as, and again, you're right, Kim, we don't we have a couple members who are not here tonight. I mean, I talked about this topic enough. I think, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I think it has, maybe needs some time to think about it, which I would understand, is this, Kyle, is this the kind of thing where it would be permissible to do some sort of a straw poll of the board to say, do we have, and really the question on the table is, do you want a board policy that specifies that major assessments must be returned?
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
Right. So if there are 5 members of the board who feel strongly about that it should be a board policy, then if that's the case, then what we would do is the administration would develop a draft board policy to bring forth to the board at the July meeting, to discuss at the retreat, to do prospectively a first reading at the July meeting and a second reading and adoption in August.
Dr. Casco and Kyle, can I just ask really, you might not know the answer to this, is that, have you seen a board policy with respect to assessment returning of tests before?
I haven't, and ironically, I had another district earlier this year that was updating their assessment policy, and I just happened to raise that I knew this was a hot button issue in Holmdel, and their position was, they looked at me like I was crazy that I was even suggesting this thing. So I'm not aware of any policy in other districts that have it. I don't think it's as focused upon as it is here. So I can't point to like an example, like just copy and paste that one offhand. No.
Truly, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a standalone policy in another board's manual, but there are tangent policies to that, right? Whether it's an assessment policy, whether it's a grading policy, and those policies exist now. They just don't include this, but there would be certain policies that would serve as, appropriate vessels into which to incorporate this language.
But grading, like we have a grading policy, but it's not a board policy. It's just the policy of the district. But we don't have it as a board policy, what grading is. We actually incorporate it into the program of studies that gets board approved,
Right.
but it's not a standalone policy.
It is, but it's very generic. It's very generic. So there's a policy, but it's very generic. If there were regulations associated with that, that's typically the line of demarcation. The policy is really more of the kind of the board's purview, if you will. And as you get into the regulations, that's really how the administration sort of implements. It's more the procedures associated with the policy. So this could conceivably be a set of regulations that were associated.
Next week, I need to get through graduation tomorrow.
You do.
Yeah, me too. I have one graduating. So,
True, yeah.
So next week, I think we already have another straw poll going out next week. So we can also do a straw poll to see who wants this as a standalone policy. And then we can go from there.
Mrs. Donnelly, you're making note of that as the straw poll person, the person responsible for straw polls as board secretary. I'll follow up with you, obviously, and with Kyle to, frame the language on that, but
Kim, were you saying to open up for comments now?
No,
Oh,
just when it's the time.
Oh,
I'll
I
have
see.
two more things. And then
okay. I didn't know
and then
when
we'll
you
hear
were
it.
saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I just think if there's a reason most districts don't have a policy for this. I think it totally puts us into a gray area. And as our board attorney said, it puts us, it's where we shouldn't be as a board and where we haven't gone in the last 12 years. I just, we're outside of our depths. I mean, the board can disagree, but I'm not taking my personal opinions and putting it what I think, which should be the rest of the town. So we can see wherever the board wants to go on it, we can do it. But we better be darn careful where we go. On to the next topic of new business, review agenda items. So everyone has their agenda. Any questions that anyone might have? I have a couple, but I'll open up to the board first.
Before I because this is a draft, that's fine. But the Schedule Bs, they're all blank as far as names. That's on purpose. Like we'll get that before
Yes, those will be in the attachment that goes home
Friday?
Friday.
Okay, thank you.
And my question on that, Scott, so Schedule B is the second to last page, whatever it is. All paid Schedule Bs? Any new? All vetted?
Yes, all as in contained in the collective bargaining agreement. There were several that were new additions to the CBA that actually had already been brought forth through sidebars and were just incorporated. I know a couple.
Technically not new because the sidebar created them. They just
Right.
added to the document.
Correct.
I just always ask. I remember a couple of years ago, I remember asking, and I ask even now, even though this isn't a big needle mover in our budget, but it's still important because I don't want to be giving out free checks when the people aren't earning the checks. Like, charity miles advisor. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that person gets paid, but do you know what that is?
That's one of our service clubs. Actually, this is one that had been in place for, I think it had been in place for more than 4 years. I think it was like 5 or 6 years, which was actually 2 years beyond the probationary period within the collective bargaining agreement. I know they do. I don't know off the top of my head the kind of service projects they do, but I know it's a very service-oriented club.
Right. I'm just always asking, again, obviously it's your guys' job and the administration's job within the high school and, wherever they all fall, just to make sure that we're,
I can tell you, Pete, that obviously within this budget process,
Yep.
My I don't want to say directive, it seems so heavy-handed, but it was that you have to separate the wheat from the chaff in these clubs. Like if they're under-enrolled, if they're not active and robust, they need to go. If nothing else, to make room for the ones that were added per the sidebar so that they were at least budget neutral, if not a realized savings. So that's become kind of a standard operating practice every year, is to review these clubs and, for enrollment and, participation.
Okay. And I see, so obviously only one retirement. I think we got one donation.
Just Pete, I'm sorry.
Oh, sure.
Anything personnel is technically not public yet. So
Gotcha.
if
Okay.
anyone
Yeah,
has any
exactly.
questions
That
about any of
makes-
the personnel items, I'm
Definitely.
happy to.
I don't know if I can ask this question then. I noticed on our job board for the district, we have 2 Schedule Bs, the tennis posted there, but not all the other Schedule B. Is there a reason why? Because we don't have someone? Is that
Yes, that's
okay?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that means somebody stepped down or.
Head coach of the tennis team, right? That's a big. I didn't even know they retired because our tennis team is usually very good. So
In some cases, when we're currently employing a coach that is not a board employee, we have to post it externally so that they're
Okay.
eligible to apply.
Okay.
Yeah, and which is actually the case. That's the case in that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Number 86. Any reason we don't list the dollar amount? That's for Spiesel. Yeah, I think that's like the energy study, energy feasibility study.
There was no specific reason, but we could add it there if you.
I think it's good. I think
Agreed.
it's just good for.
At the terms and rates in the proposal.
I think it was like 26 grand or whatever it was.
Yeah,
but I
it
think
was.
it's
We
okay.
can make that change.
Are we missing the amount on 88 as well? Just like the annual contract rate? Is that just not locked in yet? Not done? Okay.
Yeah, good question, Brittany. So that's actually on the docket for discussion in closed, where we'll have to go back in afterwards.
Yes. And then the last one, if you saw Dr. Tehan, Tim Tehan, former superintendent, he's our field service rep. So for those that haven't met him, you'll get to meet him next week. He'll do a presentation. He's the one that when we do the Dr. Cascone's superintendent evaluation, he provides he compiles all the results for us, things like this. So we'll see him next week.
Which answers your question, Joanne. That's the guy that compiles it.
Yes, but my question.
Well, that's one of your questions. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So we could do it in exact, but just high level. Got the data back today. So you'll hear from me in the next couple of days. We'll take care of it by next week, and we'll go from there. But yes, Dr. Tehan is the guy. He's the wizard. So that's it for agenda items. So central, you should have another thing in your packet. Central office department updates. So if there's any questions or if anything you want to highlight, I mean, I saw a couple of things, but I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, I think, just in the spirit of time, since we do have to go back into exec for a few items, many of the things that you see highlighted in the department updates, are also shared out through the community and in principal updates and my community newsletter. So just for the sake of time, if there's anything you had questions about, obviously, there's always great things going around. A couple of things I'll just note is I had a really fun week last week with our gifted and talented students at Indian Hill and then at Village School. And was anyone at the mini golf G&T showcase at Indian Hill? Anyhow, Mrs. Mazzina's done a great job. I had a great time with the kids trialing out their mini golf holes and talked to them about their design process. And they gave me a right-handed putter. I'm a lefty, and it was also very short. So, and then I was surprised last week when Mrs. Mazzina's third grade G&T students came to my office with a signed, autographed book of original stories that they had published and illustrations. And so our Gifted and Talented program is doing some outstanding things. And that's the fun stuff. Not that assessment practices isn't fun, but certainly meeting with students is the highlight. So, but obviously a lot of great stuff going on as we close out the year.
Scott, I was going to say, Miss Davis Mishma showed, I saw the high school patient care tech course. That's pretty cool. I think it's the collaboration with Bayshore Hospital and first year they worked directly with the hospital, I guess, staff and.
Yeah. Our health careers program is as good as, what kids are going to get at Allied. Listen, sometimes students want a little different environment, which is great. We encourage people to go where they think is best, but that is a really outstanding program with great opportunities for our kids. And that was a nice kind of building on that partnership with the hospital was a nice program that they put in place. So yeah, for sure.
And not sure how many are listening, but obviously school counselors will be in certain dates, August 4th and 5th and August 25th to the 27th. But more importantly, Ms. Rizzatillo, who's the guidance supervisor, she'll be available all summer. So it's very important for those students. I know this is if they're not working on applications, they'll be getting on them very soon within the next month for essays and all that other fun stuff. And obviously, it behooves some students to get the rolling admissions into certain colleges because it gets them ahead of it. And we know there's so many states in school like before we come back. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's a competitive advantage to get your application in. So I'm glad we fixed that from a couple of years ago.
High school counselors will be in, each of them will be in, I think it's 28 hours that we landed on. So they'll all be in 28 hours over the course of the summer to spend time with students on scheduling questions and things of that nature. And we will once again do the college application boot camp so that students can come in and get hands-on support with the Common App and get that done. So that they're ahead of the game, coming into September, and it's not so stressful because if you leave it till September, it can be pretty stressful. So,
and I can tell you, you said there's a lot of things we haven't fixed. That's been fixed because that was a problem. Guidance and math were two of the biggest problems, and guidance is definitely way further ahead than
moving in the right direction, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. Any other? All right. Questions for comments for the faithful that have been
Hold on.
patient?
I do
Joanne,
have,
yep.
This is a quick side note. This is not on
full
the
report,
agenda, but Dr. Cascone or leadership, I just wanted to have a clarification on funding for courtesy busing. I know we're not delving into the whole thing, the status. I'm not talking about any of that. For my sake, I just wanted some clarification because at the June 9th Township Committee meeting, the TC Business Administrator repeatedly said that the BOE did not request funding for courtesy busing in either the November 25 or February 2026 meetings. My understanding is that the board leadership and the superintendent met with the TC on February 13th, during which funding for courtesy busing was specifically requested. Is that not correct? It's very simple. Very simple.
Yes, it's absolutely correct.
Okay.
We have an agenda to that. So I think, and Kim or Dr. Cascone could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we asked for 3 different things.
Yeah.
Because we were going to say yes to any money they wanted to give us. One was courtesy busing, one was the Lupgard House, or one was basically to help subsidize and fund the HYAA in the high school gym. So absolutely, we have an agenda to that. I can't speak to November 2025, but yeah.
No, I just wanted to clarify because I wasn't sure which was right. I wasn't either of those. Also, the mayor stated that the township committee gave the BOE the $1 million for busing and referenced that years of BOE budget mismanagement is the reason for the current deficit. It's been discussed several times at these meetings that proceeds from the township committee's purchase of the Adding House will be needed to bolster reserves to meet the state required levels. That's just a statement. That's not a question. So my question, because they said they gave us $1 million, I just want to be clear because I'm not always partial to privy to all the meetings. To date, has the BOE received the referenced $1 million in funds related to this purchase?
I'm going to defer to Kyle on that one.
Yeah, so we're still, so while both entities approved the resolutions approving the sale, we are still waiting for the township to provide us with an actual contract. So we're basically still at the point where we were when we approved it. Nothing further has been.
Yeah.
I will say that the township had asked us for some documentation from when the board purchased this back in 20, whatever it was. And I will say Deb has done a very diligent job finding a lot of documentation, which I have sent to the township attorney. I have not had everything that they want because some things weren't done when we purchased it, but we've given them all the documentation we have, and now we're waiting for the purchase of sale from
No,
them before we move
Yeah,
forward.
so I just wanted to clarify, as a board member, I needed clarification on some of these points. Thank you.
I don't think Rocco, I think he said he gave us they gave us $1 million. I don't think he said he gave us $1 million for busing.
I think what happens was originally he said it, I was at the township meeting, I think.
Because I listened into all of them and I did.
He spoke out of turn what he said, and he tried to recant those words, and he basically said, I should not have said that. He's like, I spoke without knowledge of that. And
I'm not speaking about an earlier meeting because I was there.
You were
at the
there at
meeting
that
we
meeting, exactly.
recanted. I'm talking about specifically at June 9th, and I listened to the clip again today just to make sure I didn't hear wrong. So someone was asking about courtesy busing and why they didn't help, and the answer to that was we gave them $1 million. You can match it. So
And again, I would characterize that's not giving the
Right.
board,
I
they
just
bought
wanted-
property
yeah.
that was appraised at $1 million.
I just wanted to clarify because I was like, unless there's something I don't know about, I want to know what we're missing here. Okay, so we're on the same page. So thank you.
And with respect to the November meeting, that's not untrue, but the topic of that meeting, and that was just a meeting with Debbie and myself, with Chris Turbini and the assistant administrator. I don't recall her name, but that meeting was specifically to discuss shared services. So it had a very narrow focus. We didn't broach the topic of courtesy busing because we knew full well that the township administrator doesn't have the all-out authority unilaterally to do that, and that we were contemporaneously seeking a meeting with the town committee
About it.
for leadership for the purpose of that
Right.
discussion.
No, but it was very clear that he said not at the November meeting and not at the February meeting was courtesy busing money funding asked for. So that's all.
I had a couple things, Pete, on my list.
Sure.
So I brought this up to Art and Kim as the head of C&I, right? And I don't know, right, if the email today was pointed at me thinking that I have like full authority of this board, because I definitely don't feel that way. I feel like I'm one vote, right? I'm just trying to kind of push where I think things don't make sense. But I brought up two issues, right? So one is the presidential award. I think it's in SATs. Right. So I gave feedback that how kids meet the criteria for the presidential award should be more clearly laid out, right, on the website, which I think we did actually publish something, which is great. But I do think it still is a little bit vague, right, on whether is it all A's in 7th and 8th grade, or is it your cumulative GPA is an A? Because the way you read it, it sounds like it's your cumulative GPA across 7th and 8th, right? However, I've just been hearing some parents say their kids were not eligible, right? So just giving that feedback that I think when we have awards and things of that nature, we really need to spell it out. We need to be clear.
Does SATs give out GPA?
They give out the presidential award.
No, I know,
They
because
give
it
the-
give out GPAs. Like, I don't think I never knew what my child's GPA was in SATs. So like, I don't think it could be by.
No, I think
because
there's
I don't
just letter
think it's given
grade.
out.
I think
Right,
there's
it's
a
only letter grade,
Yeah.
right?
Well, but they reference GPA. That's what they reference in the actual, I can read you what it says on the website.
Right.
Let's give you,
Yeah.
Principles of
but
SAT.
yet we don't give it out.
So,
When you're talking about those awards, they go by the GPA.
right. So GPA would mean like your cumulative, right? And it sounds like
Right.
some parents
So
are
those
saying,
are
well,
like
no, actually I have
separate things.
cumulative A's,
Yeah.
but I got 1 B plus, right? So it sounds like maybe it's, you have to have A's throughout. So I'm just saying, I think it's hard, right? Because a kid gets to the end of the year, they think they qualify for something, and then they're kind of bummed out that they don't get it. And it's just, we're just not clear. We're not giving good guidance.
Yeah, no,
to
clear
people, right?
expectation for
Right,
what,
of
and
what you
it
qualify
gives them a
for.
target.
Yeah. And then the second thing was just talking about broadly about exemptions for final exams. So I don't have older kids, so I'm kind of hearing this community feedback. I was surprised to hear that if you have an A in a course, right, you are deemed to have mastery of the course and you don't sit for a final. So that to me is one piece that I'd really like to digest with the board, right? Because I do have some strong feelings on like core curriculum and what we're doing as far as testing. But then my biggest concern is, you have a sophomore, junior, senior in the same class. Juniors and seniors are being exempt with no impact to their grade, whereas sophomores, right, still have to sit for that exam, even though they have an A in the course. So to me, that just screams kind of like, right, really unfair discrimination, like you name it, it just, right, like I don't think we can have things that don't have, right, all students are the same
So
in that case.
I'm going to go to your second point first, which is that it's already something that we've discussed, Art, like that we want to see consistency because we've seen that, like you can, as we colloquial call super math, right? You can have a freshman in Algebra 2, which is a junior level course, and you could have literally just that freshman sitting and taking the exam and everybody else is out, right? So
And it could only hurt them, right? They don't get an A on that exam. It hurts them, right?
right.
They have
So
to show them.
so it's already been up for discussion, and I'd like to, see that we can kind of hammer that down for what that looks like for next year, because I do think that it should be based on course, but yet how we get there, like in my head, if I don't know if it's, hey, you're in English 9, do you get to be exempt, or is it on a regular track, right? Starting if a regular track student would be in Algebra 2 as a junior, anyone in Algebra 2 then can be like, right? And this is like an ongoing conversation that we're going to try to narrow,
But that gets tricky
down.
with tracks, right? Because every kid is like, I just think all students are equal in a classroom.
Perhaps,
right?
and
So-
perhaps, and then as far as, so I don't know what the administration wants to do with that. It's just been an ongoing discussion that Art and I had, and now I'll have it in the future now with Emily, right? Is that correct? Okay. But, ultimately, those types of decisions are definitely not our purview. We can discuss it, right? But it's definitely not our purview as far as that. But I will say, as far as the final exam exemptions, that is a longstanding practice across probably every high school. Like that is
I didn't have to take
I didn't
exam.
have
Oh,
to.
I did. I guess I grew up in a wrong part of the world.
Like that is like so.
I got my
There's-
exams back at
and it's
Notre Dame too, Pete. So I don't know. Your kids just don't get exams back.
I mean,
either.
I work with a lot of, because, if you talk to, because I guess my age and what my kids are, right? I have a lot of coworkers that are across schools, in many different high schools right now, a lot of, and I have now freshman and senior and everything in between. And I, because of your question, I actually asked, they all do all of their.
So what does everybody do for the last 2 months of the year? Like, what are we doing? Right? I mean,
Here's your
like you might have
little
known
issue.
It's a week.
It's a
It's
week.
not 2 months.
Okay, but just in general,
But
right?
here's
And
your
then
issue. I can
it-
tell you, the seniors for the last couple weeks, I don't want to say they didn't do anything, but their instruction is over because and one of the issues is many of our seniors, many of our juniors, a lot of kids in high school, they take APs. The APs are not tested this week. The APs were 2 weeks ago at earliest. I mean, at least.
yeah, and I'd say that is a final,
and-
so that's fine.
But my
right?
point is, instruction's over at that point because there's nothing else the teacher's going to teach at that point. Dr. Keller, Dr. Berger, Ms. Michaud, all the different AP teachers.
Yeah, I'm not talking AP. I'm talking the regular course.
But
that we have,
that-
right? But
Yeah,
I'm just
and-
saying you have 3 equal students. They all mastered the art and you discriminated against one.
Yeah.
It just is just broadly, right? It just.
Yeah, so I think, this is actually what I actually really enjoy about working with the board, because I think though board members may not necessarily come from the educational field, you're still critical thinking individuals, with experience, your own experiences and perspective. Sometimes we have these long-standing practices, right? And they just kind of roll over because it's what we've done for decades, right? But when's the last time we've actually just really looked at it and said, okay, and that's not to say that we may take a close look at it and say, you know what, we still believe in this. We still think it makes sense. But I think when a board member brings it up, and what I think happens when a board member has sort of a wondering, right, is that it goes exactly through the process that it is, which is like you charge the administration with saying, we'd be interested in learning more about this, right? And it gives us an opportunity to go back to these practices and say, okay, why are we doing this? Like, what are the pros? What are the cons? And you never know, like through that evaluation and analysis, which is really only happening because you raised the question, sometimes can lead to a change in practice. And we may be the first high school in the state that decides like we're going away from that. We may not, but it creates an opportunity for us to revisit and evaluate these practices. So, I always appreciate a fresh perspective. We'll take a closer look at it. I think it's a good question.
Yeah, it
to-
was put on the
Yeah.
CNI.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
put on
I
the
more
CNI
just wanted to bring it up broadly, right?
subcommittee.
Because we haven't talked,
Yeah.
right? So I just wanted to bring it to the rest of the board members.
And I wasn't going to bring this up tonight because it's already getting late and we keep trying to get to the community comments. However, since you did bring it up, Pete, I did have this to say because you're like, they're seniors, like their instruction is done. So I want to bring up this point because it's actually been kind of a source of contention. So general cell phone use and instruction time. So student and staff accountability for district cell phone and instructional time expectations, including concerns about unstructured class time and unrestricted phone use in physical education and elective classes, as well as reports of instruction or ending as early as May, not seniors. I have a freshman, and in 3 separate classes, she can't, and I think the only reason it came up is because she does not regularly bring her phone to school, whereas if kids regularly bring their phones, they wouldn't be vying for it at breakfast on Monday, June 1st, saying 3 separate classes. Instructors already told us, formal instruction is done for the year, so can I please bring my phone to school? Otherwise, I'm going to be the only one there without a phone with nothing to do. So, and then while some electives may conclude earlier, because I had this conversation with Dr. Cascone, I think clarification is, I'd really like to request that regarding expectations for instructional time through the end of the year and any related accountability measures. So requirements, and the one other thing is she wanted to bring her phone to school today because she said she had to return a calculator, and you can't do that without having a phone to scan in a QR code. So now we're forcing kids to scan in a QR code to return a calculator, or they're out of compliance. That sounds
No, got it. It's sort of funny. Scott and Dr. Casco and I were talking earlier, next year, the cell phone policy will start in September. So it'd be sort of funny. How are you going to return your phone without a QR problem? No, I hear you. It's all good conversation. I mean, I
Sorry,
do.
Pete, I had one more. Sorry,
I have one too.
I'm on a roll here.
Oh.
I wanted just to talk about facility use.
That's the one I was gonna hit on.
You want to?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Just so it's on record, I shared with Dr. Cascone, Kim, Deb. We hire, a lot of outside user groups for years have used our facilities. Recently, we hired, spotted out the football program for St. John Vianney, moved to our school. And I know, thanks to board member Manning, sending pictures of, it looks like chaos out in our high school. And knowing that we paid, it literally boiled my blood beyond belief, $1.8 million for that field in the back. And thankfully, the league's over, I believe. But for multiple weeks in a row, there were people all over our facilities, parking everywhere. So poor Ken Strom's land on the facility guys, destroying their hard work. And the great majority of this league is not Holmdel people. So my only recommendation to the administration was, when we rent out some of these facilities, we really need to vet the groups. And then we also need to make sure that they're held to an even higher level. Because this is we don't have budgets to fix the fields and everything else.
and take a security deposit.
Or whatever it is. I mean, I don't know, Mr. Casal's still here, but I know all his coaches do not need broken ankles and other things because we've destroyed the turf field up top or Rogie Field or whatever it is. I mean, and then this weekend, I just happened to be driving by and I saw the same things that board member Brittany saw, and it was very, very upsetting because they could care less about our facilities and they were all over. And this is after weeks, a couple of you talked about it. And then, when I saw the dance studio outside here, I didn't share with the whole board, but the dance program recital, third party outside agency, has been doing it for many, many years. Tents were all over our SATS property, right in front of right outside the theater. I don't want to tell you what kind of drinks I saw out there. I don't want to tell you cars on the grass, cars right by the flagpole, bags of food everywhere. I feel bad for our custodians on Monday having to have to clean that up. But to me, that really bothers me because this is our house, this is our stuff. And knowing how bad our budget's been, is it worth it to have them would be my question. And that's one thing I strongly would recommend future boards to, we got to, is it worth 10 grand? Sometimes
We
I
have
don't
to
know.
compare ourselves to Airbnb, but can't we have policies that protect us against property
Well, we have a
destruction or-
policy, but
I
it's
mean,
also
like-
about enforcing it and basically having the right to bounce them or say your season's over, go find another field to
I
play
get
on.
that, but rather than trying to charge them later and then have to, chase after them like a tax collector, why don't we take a security deposit and maybe they'll be more
Well, I'll
cognizant?
leave it to Dr. Cascone or Deb. I know that she had some plans for, I guess remediation or fixing so we don't have these problems going forward because, it could be worse. I don't know if you want to chat on.
Deb was sort of taking the lead on that. Has a few preliminary ideas. I had an idea as well. So Deb, do you want to speak a little bit about that?
I mean, currently we do have an agreement that they sign. They have to give us an insurance certificate. And there is a policy. And clearly states, no alcoholic beverages, parking in only designated spaces. It gives us the right to revoke the permit. Unfortunately, for this weekend, that was the last hurrah, right? Sometimes it's a one-time event, so what are we revoking at that point?
But could they
But
could
going
not come
forward, right,
back?
we have the option of not renewing with them. And as far as, sometimes we do take a deposit, but sometimes it's dependent on, how many hours they ultimately are here, so we are charging after the fact. So we will be looking at our agreement and our policy. The policy gives us the right to impose, repercussions after, but for unauthorized use, not for use and using it in an unauthorized fashion. So we'll make recommendations to the policy so that we could do something going forward. At this point, I'm going to create a letter of reprimand to these groups, and then we can decide if we don't want to have them back in the future, then we won't approve them for next year.
The other thing I was considering was adding to the fee is payment for, having a class 3 officer here to enforce, right? And that just becomes rolled into their cost.
Yeah, we should probably have somebody on site. Mhm.
Right, because the liability that we encourage, and also people are thinking, oh, it's Holmdel. And meanwhile, it's not Holmdel. It's just people using our property and basically just treating it like junk. So I don't think we need it. And I'm glad, when that comes up again, hopefully, Deb, the folks in your office know not just to, rightly just approve anyone that's going to sign up or whatever. Because I know this group was at St. John Vianney. I know why they're not at St. John Vianney anymore. So as one of 9, I would say no. That would be one right off the bat. You don't even have to. I wouldn't even give them a second chance because we've mentioned it for weeks and nothing has improved. Go there on a Sunday. It's a disaster back there. We're lucky nothing bad has happened in a way in my mind. So, Ms. Rao, thank you for waiting. So, item P: questions or comments from the public. So we're probably, as Kim said, we're probably not gonna have a dialogue, but please give us your comments and feedback because just like hearing from the board, anything, maybe we're not thinking of something that you guys have that can definitely be thought about because there's no reason we wouldn't. So thank you.
Hi, this is Chandana Rao, 57 Oaks Drive. I want to first thank Mr. Howard for a really thorough analysis, and we appreciate your last hurrah to do this. That's really great. Thank you. I do want to say that I thought the particular preliminary report was very helpful. The issue for many of us, and I'll speak for myself, is not just a return of tests per se. Return of tests is important, and as Dr. Kalur stated, it's really about parental rights in a way where it gives parents who want something, right, to help their student, helps their child. It gives them a particular advantage or an opportunity to help their children the way they see fit with schooling. Fine. We certainly also, I want to also, note that the teachers do a phenomenal job. It is not something, they are already overworked. And given the particular constraints, we're understaffed to some extent. So we certainly, I as a parent don't want to impinge on them more than they already are. That's why I think Dr. Kalura's perspective makes sense, right? It's flexible and more to the point, it's return of tests is one aspect of a greater sort of assessment efficiency, if you will. And I think that looking at K through 8 as the place where your returning tests make sense. High school, again, I'll speak for myself as a high school student. I learned on my own. My parents were very hands off. And one of the ways I did learn was to get the test back and review it. Of course, not everyone is going to have the wherewithal to talk to a teacher and have the teacher say, can you please go over X, Y, and Z? Perhaps they're too shy. They'll want to struggle through it themselves. But options ought to be there for students and their parents to succeed, right? So I think this like blended approach that you're looking at, where you have more of a consistency of practice, right? I felt so embarrassed to bother my son's teachers for questions because they do a fantastic job. But because I'm not getting insight as to what the problems are, I have to then bug them, set up a schedule appointment, and they take their time and they're very generous with their time, and then they go over the questions that my son may not have understood. Now, with regard to the reflections papers, a great idea, right? But implementation is really based on emotional maturity, right? I think that if you're a high school student, sure, perhaps you're much more, aware of what the reflections ought to be, right? If it's math, sometimes you just go through the problems and you're like, oh yeah, that's what I did wrong. But if it's science or if it's social studies or history or English, it's not as intuitive, or rather, it's not as clear, right? So I think if you wish to create a policy, and I don't think it's a return to use per se policy, right? I think you're looking at a broader based, sort of assessment policy where a return of tests is really baked into the larger policy that you already have. And I think it's broad enough that you're not going to, I think, encounter issues down the road. That's just my opinion. Lastly, I think, this is a very opportune time to approach this. I think you've had 1 year data. The P factors were not very, to your point, they weren't really significant. So it's hard to say one way or the other if the process was successful or not. But given the feedback from parents, students, and teachers, I think at least from a non-statistical perspective, from a qualitative perspective, that's at least enough to start the conversation at this juncture, in my view. And lastly, Kim brought up a fantastic point about the fact that we're talking about AI. We're talking about balanced use of technology. You've seen my emails about how I feel about technology. I am not anti-tech, but I believe in balanced tech. I think studies are coming out after a decade that maybe we may need to cut back a little. I think this is a great opportunity for the board to develop policies that really reflect where Holmdel students and Holmdel parents are. We are a very strong academic institution. Our goal is to become even better, reclaim our glory days if possible. And I think this is a real good opportunity. And I think, this is a fantastic, perfect storm of developing policies that help students' achievements. That's what I have to say. And have a great summer.
Made total sense. Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so Chand and I have been exchanging dissertations on tech balance, and we are actually, I believe, are actually very well aligned in our philosophies on this. Of course, as the superintendent responsible for the execution of a strategy and the execution of sort of not a complete paradigm shift, but definitely a major course correction with respect to digital versus analog learning, and really with a cautionary tale of when we just ushered in technology lock, stock, and barrel without really a thoughtful, deliberate, and strategic approach to do that. I think that what I'm suggesting is that next year is, and I think the board is on board with this because I know that I think everyone on the board sort of shares that perspective that you do, Chandana, and I do, that the time is now to evaluate how are we at a balance, right? I know that there's sort of a hypothesis that we are, right? But we need to test that hypothesis first by really evaluating by grade, by subject, what is the current balance or lack thereof. I think this is much more a curricular question than it is a policy question. In terms of when we look at our curriculum, does it overemphasize technology, right? And how can we rewrite curriculum and revamp it so that, and really looking at the purpose for which we're using technology, right? I think that's also part of this evaluation is like, do we need technology for this? Or are we just defaulting to it because it's easy? Does it make sense to actually do this exercise in an analog format? Is there more value to that? And those are not decisions or questions that are going to happen overnight, right? And so, when I see these large school districts like LA Unified just going like, Yep, this is an arbitrary number. I'm going to call it arbitrary because I don't think it's research based when they said this is the amount of time we're going to do it versus not doing it. I think they've committed the same exact mistake that we did when we said everybody should have a device, right? I think we have to be really deliberate about the way we go about, understanding if we're out of balance, why we're out of balance, and what does the substitute look like. I think this represents an outstanding district goal. I'm certainly going to make that recommendation when we meet on the 22nd, so that we don't lose sight of it over the course of the year. But I think the board and the administration is aligned with that perspective for sure.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am,
Hi,
don't break that. We're on a very tight budget.
I use this regularly, so at work.
Matt.
It's all good. Dr. Svetlana Yedrstein, pleased to be here. Thank you so much for your thoughtful presentation. I think a lot of really good data, a lot of really important.
Could you just state your
points.
address as well?
Sure, 7 Beverly Drive, Holmdel, New Jersey. Yep, Holmdel. And
More
you will very much be missed. So I was shocked and kind of sad to hear that you're leaving. I really enjoyed the thoughtful dialogue and the multiple perspectives, and I wanted to add a couple things and double click on some of the things that have been said here. One, from a data perspective, if there are 1,500 kids in the complex, for the data to be statistically significant, I would hope we would see a sample size of at least 300. And to your point, the Ps were not at 0.05 or at 0.01. What was also interesting in terms of the data is that it was showing that there was no adverse effect, but what about the opportunity for a positive impact? We didn't talk about that. I have conscientious students. I was a conscientious student. I think all of you are, and all of the parents who are invested in this, who care, whether those are students who are delay time processors, who need a little bit more time to look at that test outside of what happens in the classroom and that reflection period and that journaling and review, which is so, so, so important. Sometimes you just need to sit with something and try a problem, try a question. Sometimes you need to have a parent look at it with you, or a sister or a cousin or a tutor. Not giving kids who are conscientious and want to learn and grow that time by taking that test back, I think sets them back and puts them at a disadvantage. So I think that's really important. As a parent, I've been bugging my kids for the last 3 or 4 years. Why am I not seeing these tests? I've been emailing teachers for the last 2 or 3 years. Why am I not seeing these tests? Because as a parent, I'm invested. I want to know. I want to know, are they rushing? I want to know, are they not showing their work? I want to know, are they improving? Because every year my kid has a different teacher. They have a different style, a different methodology, different levels of complexity that they're trying to cover, different skills they're trying to build. I want to be invested. I want to know. And right now, I feel like I'm completely in the dark without seeing those essays, without seeing those major exams, seeing how they're written and how I can help them prepare and study, or have them sit quietly and try it again and go back to the teacher if they still don't get it. We're depriving those kids of those opportunities. I also love the idea, why can't we return the tests 1 or 2 weeks later? Why do we have to create extra work and complicate things for the teachers by having to have multiple versions of exams versus waiting just a little bit so we get the kids who are on vacation, who are sick, who had whatever happening, to complete the tests, and then give those who do want to learn, who are curious, who have that growth mindset, who do want to lean in, the opportunity to improve and learn from that. That's what education to me is all about. So with that, I would just strongly endorse, we really reconsider the ability and the possibility and giving the flexibility to kids and parents to be able to take those exams back. Thank you.
Perfect. Wow, you knew 3 minutes to the T. Well done.
I have just
One thing I was going to say is I think we sort of talked about it, didn't talk about it years ago when we got extra help in the teacher contract. One of those reasons to get the extra help was obviously for extra help. It was also to give the kids and the teachers the ability, windows of opportunity. I think it's after school and during unit lunch, I believe.
Yeah.
To give those students the opportunity to go get the extra help or review a test or something like that because labs get in the way or they have other things going on. And I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that whether it's from first grade or kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, I don't think there's many teachers that are pushing back against if a kid reaches out for extra help or, I've never heard of such thing, right? I mean,
No, the challenges are a bit more nuanced, where, maybe the days that they're offered conflict based upon, if they need it for multiple teachers and they only offer it on some day. So there's some pain points, but not related to not doing it. I mean, they do it twice a week, once during unit lunch and once in the afternoon. So that's happening.
Just going back to last year, I remember the conversation, the 2 week, and I don't necessarily agree with what I'm about to say, but I believe you had mentioned that there are private tutors profiting off of these exams, right? Creating these test banks, marketing to students in our district that they have all the tests. This came up, we can go back to the film, but it was brought up about a year ago. Yeah, right? So that's why I wanted to bring that up, because that wasn't said.
I don't have, a smoking gun on that one, if you will. I mean, there's no, direct evidence that that's the case. You want to call it truth or suburban legend, but that I've heard that said. Yeah.
With Dr. Cascone about it, he actually brought that up. He goes, I really don't want to be a proponent of helping all of these Kaplans and Princeton reviews, not that they're the culprits here, market that they have Holmdel's entire test bank. To that, I say, if they want to steal the entire test bank, haven't the students already studied?
Any other comments? I see one more.
Good evening. I'm not going to be as eloquent as everybody else was here today, but I'll make two short points that were kind of on my mind.
Just name and address, please.
Alexandra Manovich, or Tycor Run, Holmdel. A couple of points. I have a freshman and I have a freshman in college who just came back. Very different perspective from one another. But what I do want to say, as a freshman, what you were saying, that the kids in college do something completely different. The freshmen, especially boys and freshmen, are much closer to 7th and 8th grade. And I feel like they require a lot more support and a lot more help from the parents. And no matter how much they go to extra help, the amount of time, if I make them sit down and make sure he looks at that problem 4 times, is going to be much more beneficial, in my opinion. And in my case by case different, is going to be much more beneficial than him doing it through the teacher. That's one point. And the second point is, he's a freshman right now. He's going to be a sophomore next year. While we consider this and while we'll think through this, like time is of the essence, kind of. So we do need to kind of put and try to get these things as close as possible to what the best outcome is going to be. So that same freshman who he was in exactly the same situation that you were just discussing. He took Algebra 2. He's only freshman. He had 89.7. He took the test. He got an 84 on it. He goes like, Ma, I have a B+. There's nothing I can do about it. And I'm like, well, he already had that A going into that test. Half of the students who were juniors and seniors didn't have to sit through that test. But he actually was one of the few who did have to sit through that test. So it's like, well, while we're, as you said, that's something that we need to touch base on. It's kind of happening as we're talking about it. And it is an issue. And if it's going to change next year, what happens to all of the kids who actually missed it? So it is something to think about and consider, because 7th, 9th grader is much closer to, especially if he's a younger, or she is a younger 9th grader, then they are much closer than the college or senior kids who are coming out. So just thank you.
Yeah, and along those lines, right, the mastery thing, right? An A is a 90. Would that be correct? So then an 89.7, like, is a 90 really mastery too, right? So like, someone's always going to be left out, right? On that line, right? To her point, right? That sounds like he was just borderline. So you're telling me a kid with 90 is mastery, but a kid with 89.4 is not.
It happens all the time.
I know.
I can tell you, and the kids know exactly where they're at, because I remember my son, like, each semester, okay, I need to get this on the final. I need to get this. I need to stay at this. And I know Alice was on the board, Kim was on the board, Farouk was on the board years ago when we changed the grading policies. That was a seismic move, because if you change it midstream, oh my God, what about the kid? My son was negatively affected. He took an AP capstone as a junior. If he took it as a senior, it was worth less. So he literally got less GPA just because of the timing. So thankfully, there was thoughtful dialogue and thoughtful decisions by the administration where we said, okay, it's going to apply to all incoming freshmen. I think we're now in year 4 of that or 3.
No.
Where this way,
I
is it
think
year
it's-
3 probably? Going into year 3.
Because
Because these things have almost like, how would you say?
Yeah, I'm
a
not
domino
arguing that
effect.
somebody's going to be left
No, but-
out, right?
but-
I'm
but-
just arguing like, get it right.
But you want to get
Like,
exactly,
this
and
is
that's
it.
why we literally had to say you almost have 2 GPAs within high school. You have the freshmen from 2 years ago,
Mhm.
or and then you have the legacy kids, I guess you want to call them, or the grandfathered in ones. Because as so many parents and we said, it was like you can't move the goalposts in the middle of the game. Just like when we changed we were one of the only districts in the state that was giving 5.5 for AP, and the reason we did this years ago was, as a board, we on a macro level, like, oh, we want to increase participation. We absolutely did. We knocked it out of the park. But there's probably not another district in the state that was giving that much of value, and the kids loved it. They're like, I'm not taking an honors class. I'm going to take as many APs as I can because I could get a C or a B in AP, and it's actually worth an A. So, I mean, so we obviously walked that back smartly, and now it's, like a 5.0 like every other district in the state. But it was,
we took a stab at modifying the grading scale. Remember
like
that?
plus
A couple of years
minuses.
ago, because we were like,
Yeah.
an A is, we have no minuses in our grading scale at the high school, which is very unusual. We were recommending going to A minuses, A's, and A plus.
I think there's like the
So,
first time
so
in a
you would
decade.
have to have, it would have to be, I think it was a 94 would be an A. And the pitchforks and torches came out and
Yeah.
we retracted.
Because
it.
you're
No,
not
I'm
just
just
competing against,
arguing
you're
of,
competing
like-
against the state and the country.
Yeah, I'm more arguing the whole mastery
yeah.
of the class. Where does that even fall? So the whole exam thing altogether, that's more what I'm arguing. But it is interesting because it's the kids who are challenging themselves who are in
Yeah.
high level classes and they're the ones who have to end up sitting. again
Yeah, but
for
I
the
will say
exam.
that, like, my nephew, who was one of these high performing students, he actually, as a student council rep, was one of the speakers against having, like, he didn't want an A plus and a minus and whatever. He said, because right now, because like, and I remember his thought process was, right now, those of us, like, we're collaborative and we share and we study together. And if you are going to make it where there's now like an A plus and a this, like, whatever, he's like, you're going, like, now we're not going to be collaborative. We're actually going to fight against
Not
each other,
exactly.
and we're going to hoard, and he's like, but this is not our community. Like, he's like, you're going to pit us against each other.
Right.
And I thought, spoke very eloquently about it, at one of the board meetings about
the other-
not doing that.
And the other argument was, we want to reduce stress. We keep having all these conversations for years about kids being overstressed, overtaxed, overburdened. These minuses would have absolutely raised that to another level where it's like, okay, we're trying to avoid it, and yet we're, ratcheting it up on them.
And it was like, we have pluses, but not an A plus. And that was also one of the additions, was going to be
Yeah,
adding an
sorry,
A.
maybe I didn't make my argument. Like, I'm not arguing for pluses and minuses.
we're
I'm
good
just
conversation.
saying
Yeah.
a 90
Is it
now
really
is
matter?
what the,
Yeah.
and then now it's the 89.
You're absolutely-
Right. So sorry, I didn't mean to go on a tangent.
No, not at all.
about that. plus
No, I'm just
minuses
giving you some
differences.
perspective, but like,
Yeah.
a lot of the grading stuff has happened over the past several years live in board meetings, and it's been an adventure. Not necessarily a good one all the time.
But-
Although Kyle says we're a delight,
Yes, we'll absolutely
was
take
his
a
words.
close look.
I do find you all delightful.
so.
Ma'am.
Hi, Margarita Borgo for the summit. Hi. Good evening, President, board members, superintendent, and members of the Holmdel community. Tonight, I'm asking the board to reconsider its decision to eliminate courtesy busing. I understand that this was not an easy decision. I also understand that the district faces serious budget concerns. I understand difficult choices have been made across the district, including staffing reductions and program cuts. I do not envy the position you are in, but I also believe that there are certain decisions that deserve a second look when the consequences extend beyond dollars and cents. Courtesy busing is one of those decisions. Over the past several months, many families have spent significant time evaluating the routes students will now be expected to walk. Parents have driven them, walked them, photographed them, recorded them, and what we found is concerning. We found long stretches without sidewalks. We found areas without pedestrian lighting. We found busy intersections with significant vehicle traffic. We found routes that were never designed to accommodate large numbers of elementary and middle school students walking to and from school every day. The roads themselves have not changed. The infrastructure has not changed. The only thing changing is that hundreds of additional children may now be expected to use them. I also think it's important to recognize that subscription busing does not fully address the concerns many families have raised. Many parents can drive their children to school. Many parents will find a way. Many parents will make sacrifices because they feel they have no other choice. But not every family has that flexibility. Some parents leave for work before school starts. Some work multiple jobs. Some rely on older students attending different schools. And some simply cannot absorb the additional transportation costs year after year. When transportation is removed, before safe alternatives exist, the burden falls most heavily on the families with the fewest resources and the least flexibility. For those families, the choice is not between free busing and paid busing. The choice may be between finding transportation they cannot easily afford or having a child walk a route they do not believe is safe. That is not a position any parent should be forced into, and it's not the kind of community Holmdel strives to be. I recently observed and recorded a traffic conditions at the intersection of Telegraph Hill Road and South Holland Road during the school dismissal time. In a matter of minutes, vehicles approached from multiple directions simultaneously. Drivers were focused on navigating traffic, turning movements, and surrounding vehicles. No crossing guards were present. No enhanced pedestrian protections were visible. And yet, this is precisely the type of location where increased student foot traffic may now occur. The concern is not that every child will be injured. The concern is that the risk is entirely avoidable. And when we are talking about children, avoidable risks matter. I know some have argued that students across New Jersey walk to school every day, and that is true. But conditions that expect children to walk typically provide the infrastructure necessary to support that decision. Sidewalks, crosswalks, pedestrian signals, lighting, traffic calming measures, crossing guards. Holmdel has many wonderful qualities, but in many areas, we simply do not have that infrastructure today. And that is why so many parents are concerned. What has been most striking throughout this process is the level of community response. More than 700 residents signed a petition opposing the elimination of courtesy busing. That is not a small number. Those signatures represent families from every corner of our community, parents with different backgrounds, different perspectives, different political views, yet all of them reached the exact same conclusion. They believe this decision places student safety at unnecessary risk. The size of that response should matter because it reflects something deeper than transportation. It reflects trust. Families want to know that when decisions affecting children are made, safety remains the highest priority. I also want to speak about the broader impact on our district. Holmdel has long been known for excellent schools. The reputation did not happen by accident. Families choose Holmdel because they believe it offers high-quality educational experience and a strong community environment for children. And I can personally say that is exactly why I moved to this township. But perception matters, and families are paying attention. This year, residents have watched beloved teachers lose their positions. They have watched programs reduced, and now they're watching courtesy busing disappear. Whether we agree with those decisions or not, together they create a narrative that concerns families. I have already spoken with residents who are questioning whether Holmdel is moving in the right direction. I've spoken with parents who are reconsidering a future enrollment decision. I've spoken with prospective families who are surprised to learn that students may be expected to walk routes lacking basic pedestrian infrastructure. That should concern us all, because once confidence in the school district begins to erode, rebuilding it is far more difficult than preserving it. I recognize that the board's decision is that eliminating courtesy busing saves approximately $625,000, and I understand that number. But I would respectfully ask the board to also consider the costs that are harder to measure. The cost of diminished public confidence, the cost of community division, the cost of families choosing alternative educational options, the cost of parents feeling that safety concerns were not given sufficient weight.
I gotta be that guy. You're well past 3 minutes. You're probably like double that time. So if you wouldn't mind 30 seconds wrapping it up,
I will. Yeah, not a
I
problem.
appreciate your comments. Thank you.
And most importantly, the cost of being wrong. Because if a serious incident occurs after the transportation is removed, no budget savings will make the decision easier to explain. No one in this room wants to be in that position, and I certainly do not. And I know none of you do either. That is why I'm asking the board tonight to revisit this issue. Not because you lack authority to eliminate courtesy busing, but having authority to do something and making the right decision is not always the same thing. Boards revisit decisions all the time when new information emerges or when public concerns demonstrate additional review is warranted. This community has spoken loudly and clearly. Hundreds of families have expressed concern, and parents have documented those. They have organized, they have advocated, and I am asking you to listen.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, we've been talking about this topic for a couple of years. Your comments don't fall on deaf ears. So, and we're still listening. So thank you. Ma'am.
Hi, Anna Levine, 33 Ashley Drive. I concur with everything that was just said about courtesy busing. Just one note, I believe it's closer to 800 verified signatures for the petition. I believe it was 785. Just wanted to speak to the board and add some additional comments. I have a daughter entering high school this September. A bus that provides transportation to both SATs and high school students combined, we know they share busing, right? They start the same time, they end the same time. Will stop on the street of the kids living between 2 and 2.5 miles from school. A SATs child will board the bus for free. High school child will not be allowed on unless residence pays $750, right? Same street, same intersection, same dangerous walk, different price tag. The route my daughter would walk crosses Holmdel Road and Crawford's Corner Road. 6 lanes of traffic moving in 3 directions, no crosswalk, no sidewalk, no crossing guard. In October, she would be making that crossing in the dark. Holmdel was largely developed as a low-density suburban rural township, and the township planning documents explicitly note preserving this rural character and being very selective about adding sidewalks and crosswalks. And I keep hearing reference about Hazlet cutting their courtesy busing. They're more compact and developed on the traditional suburban grid, with a much larger share of homes connected to schools through residential streets with sidewalks, curb ramps, and controlled intersections. So this is not a courtesy you're cutting. It's a danger that I believe is being created. New Jersey Statute 18839-1.1 requires district to provide transportation when the route to school is hazardous. I would like to know what study or Oprah records justify directing students onto that intersection. If no study exists, the board made a budget decision and called it a policy, and the distinction matters enormously. The deposit deadline was due June 11th. Families received notice on June 5th. 6 days to make $500 non-refundable financial commitment for September, before summer begins, before circumstances are known. I'm here tonight with other affected families, and we're not going away, but we would love to solve it here. Please reinstate busing for the affected routes. Please commission an independent hazardous route review. If safety matters. A bus is already coming down the street. Please put our children on it. Thank you.
Thank you. What? Okay. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Svetlana Ustinova, 823B Holmdel Road. I'm here because the issue is not about busing. It's about whether the board is willing to look parents in the eyes and say, your child can walk on the roads, and we all know that not safety built for the children, right? This is issue. My family lives with a technical walking distance, and walking distance does not automatically mean safe walking distance. This road includes heavy traffic, missing pedestrian infrastructure, and absolutely no protection for children. As again, I repeat the ladies, family was given only 5 days to decide wherever to pay 500. For my family, it's $1,500. But it's not about money. It's about how it was done, the way it was done. We got such a 5 days to decide, and it's not refundable. And then after that, after we're paying, we learn the most important point that student may still have been required to walk about 0.4 miles to a centralized bus stop. Wonderful. Parents are being asked to pay hundreds of dollars while still bearing the safety risk. This is not transportation solution. It's a shift of responsibility from the district to the parents' shoulder. What the most important concern and the lack of transparency and the burden placed on the parents. Families have attended meetings, we filed OPR requested, review policies and budget. We just examined roads and repeatedly documented a raised safety concern. And sounds like nobody wants to listen to us. And if the district believes these roads are safe, and they should be provide the analysis, criteria, road evaluation, and reasoning that support that conclusion. The community deserves full transparency. Public trust should not be dependent on repeated requested from us. I understand the district faces budget challenges. All families have budget and we know what we're talking about, but the safety must not be treated as a budget line items. Families should not be forced to choose between paying additional fees and sending their children on roads. And Holmdel has long promoted the phrase, a commitment to the excellence. But with courtesy busing eliminated, staffing a program reduction, an ongoing safety program, an ongoing safety concern raised by families, more parents are now asking whether that commitment is still fully rejected and a decision being made today. And Dr. Cascon, with my absolutely respect, you, as both superintendent and volunteer firefighters, you understand that safety depends on prevention. We should not wait for an accident or injury before taking this concern seriously. The responsibility is to act now and prevent harm before it occurs. And today, I urge the board to take immediate action. Please restore courtesy busing and minimum post-implementation until the district conduct and publicly shared a comprehensive safety review. Publish the hazardous roads analysis, evaluation, and criteria used. Work with the parents, township officials, engineers, and law enforcement to evaluate every affected road before September and address and identify safety risk. Most important, remember who you serve. The board is accountability to this community. It should be leading this effort, not expecting parents to do the district work. We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking the board to fulfill its responsibility to protect students, represent taxpayers, and place children's safety ahead of budget convenience. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I'm inclined to respond.
Okay. Superintendent will respond when we're done, or was that, ma'am?
Hi, Jen Ashkar, 21 Spring Valley Drive. Art, Howard, congratulations on your retirement. That's awesome. And thank everyone. I want to thank everyone for the discussion tonight. I really think it's great to hear all the different perspectives. I feel like there were a few years there where we weren't really getting that. I liked your presentation. Could we put it back up for a second? I just have a question about one of the slides. I don't know if that's possible. Um, yeah, I mean, I just.
I think this presentation will be posted to the website probably in the next day or two or something.
You a question about, I
Yeah.
don't prepare. Prepare it. If we could go back to the slide that had the student responses on it, I think it was like a blue.
One that's sort of 116 responses, couple more right there.
Yeah, I can't, my eyes don't really work, but
Want to go to presentation mode? Thank you.
yeah, so I was trying to look at this slide and I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like when students were given these options, they were not asked how they felt about getting tests back. Did we ever ask the kids if they would benefit from getting
one of the
tests back?
slides. It is. Hold on. So major,
Okay.
go to the next one.
Because I feel like that would have been a
So
good
here,
category.
Major student concerns.
Those are the four biggest things.
Time to take them home.
I'm sorry, which number is that on this?
Number 2.
Number 2, okay.
Like, so it says they have a
Take
desire
them
to
home.
take
Okay, but that wasn't included on the survey slide. Just go back to that blue slide again. Yeah, I feel like that would have been a good category to add so that you could really see what was most important to kids. I don't know, maybe it was, I'm not sure. Also, I wanted to ask about absenteeism. I guess I'm just like, I'm a little confused why it's an issue, because it sounds like what you're arguing is that when kids are absent, when they miss an assessment because they're absent, there is more opportunity to cheat.
What's
But-
on the test? What were the questions? Can you help me? Like
Gotcha.
basically get a competitive advantage.
Yeah, but like because of the drop schedule, like different periods of the class are taking the test on different days anyway. So
Correct.
if you're absent on the day of the test, you should just take the different version of the test with the next period the next day, right? I mean, I'm not really seeing why that there's a connection, I guess, there. And I would argue that maybe if we were so concerned about cheating that we should maybe look at the marking period weighting of major assessments. How I think right now, like for honors and AP, we weight major assessments as 85% of a marking period grade. That's like extraordinarily high compared to surrounding districts. And it puts like a lot of pressure on kids to the point where maybe they're just absent because they need to manage their time. Like if you have 2 major assessments that count for 85% of your, that are going to be 1 of 4 assessments that count for 85% of your grade. Maybe you just need another day to study. Maybe you're not cheating. Maybe you just are trying to be smart about managing your time.
Right.
I mean, as adults, like we schedule meetings on different days, and I know it's like near impossible for the departments to coordinate. So I don't know. I wish we could give kids the benefit of the doubt a little bit more. I know there is cheating, obviously, but I think looking at that 85% weighting would be really valuable because most of the surrounding districts don't do it that way. Like high tech, biotech, these schools that are, top in the country, they weight their major assessments at 60%. Middletown, Rumson, like Rumson's ranked higher than us right now. Like they also rank their major assessments at 60%. It takes the pressure off the kids, and it also puts a little more weight on test preparation. Like kids actually do their homework. They participate in class. They do the reading when they're actually getting credit for doing it and when it impacts their grade. Right now, like when you have 15% of quizzes and homeworks and participation and reading or whatever the things are, it really doesn't matter if you do it. What matters is how you do on that one test on that one moment. And I think that if we really are concerned about cheating, and that's the main reason for the test return policy, that we have to look at that weighting.
No. Thank you. And I can't disagree with you because I know you're last couple of years we've had these conversations because I remember my kids, multiple APs, boom, all falling on the same day. I'm like, don't you have a test first period morning? He's like, I'm feeling well or whatever. And it's really because he just wanted more time. It wasn't about cheating. He wanted more time so he could be prepared for macroeconomics and AP Chem or whatever it's going to be. And I thought strongly, and I think it was more an administrative decision, which I think it's where it should sit, is with the weighting. Because I thought the same thing. I was like, sometimes you learn more.
And we talked about this last year.
We did.
At length.
But it's still a real conversation. I would say the issue hasn't gone away. I mean, 85%, I always thought, I was like, wow, that's huge. That means everything I do in the class is basically worth nothing. It's worth a half a grade in a way. And I used to think like, well, you better be too good on this test. But if you have a bad day, if you just chose B and should have been C. Now all of a sudden you're getting hammered when you're a pretty good student, do well. And I always go back to what Dr. Cascone said. 90+% of our kids graduate, 90% of our kids go to school or wherever they're going to go and succeed. And I know the kids that have gone well to school. I can talk to you about all the kids from last year. It's not one kid not going back to the same college I know of. I'm sure there might be some, but they all have done well. So I think here, the rigor of this school district is absolutely preparing these kids to do really well, because I can see them with other kids. Good example, my son was in a little off topic, but took macroeconomics or whatever, or economics. He failed it twice at Penn State. He was from Marlboro. Failed it twice. I think I'd wring my kid's neck if he failed it twice, because that's $6,000 a pop, and you got nothing for it. You 2 Ds and you're $12,000 out, and you still have to take the test. So the point is, people here, they prepared the kids well here. So
I mean, Jack came home freshman year at Notre Dame saying that it was pretty easy.
I was going to say, I think I regularly
So we
hear college is really easy.
Can I actually make a comment about that? Because I've heard that from multiple board members
Sure, yeah.
for multiple years. I actually think when kids come home from college and they say that high school was harder, or that they were
100%.
It's like they come home. I've never heard like, oh, I was well prepared. I've heard high school was harder. Holmdel High School was much harder than college. I think we're missing the mark. Like, these are high school students. They're young teenagers. They shouldn't be more traumatized from their high school experience than from their college experience.
like you said before, yeah.
Be bragging about how hard our high school, like, we should be meeting their needs now.
So
not-
I'd like to, can I interject?
Yeah, absolutely.
May I, please, for a person that's been giving blood, sweat, and tears to this place for the last 4.5 years, and through which we've improved, right? Like, I think it's very easy to just speak extemporaneously about all the things that's wrong with our high school and this, that. Now, I'm not going to suggest that the 85% shouldn't be revisited, but come to the board meetings, look at the district assessment report. All I've heard about is rankings, and the rankings are going up. That doesn't happen because we're not putting in place. And this is a moment of disillusionment for me. If all of a sudden the takeaway is that our high school is a terrible place and kids are being tortured and our practices are all terrible. I mean, this is a real disillusionment moment for me. I'm just going to be completely
I
really.
The problem if our kids are finding high school more difficult than college, because there should be like a step up where high school is preparing you well for the next.
I've heard many students come back through the senior panel, which I attend. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to attend that panel when our seniors come back over Christmas break, over holiday break, and they are not universally saying that college is harder. I have heard oftentimes, and I think if you ask parents, and I've heard parents that have said this to me, that my children were well prepared for college. I just think it's very important that when we have these sound bites that are in public, like, we're just very thoughtful about the way we express opinions, because there's a lot of people in this district, including myself and teachers and administrators, that are working hard day to day to improve this place. And I needn't remind the public where we were 4.5 years ago, okay? Where we were. This place was on fire. It was inconsistent. There was administrative churn. And it's disheartening that my predecessor was criticized, and maybe rightfully so, for obfuscating data. It's ultimately one of the reasons why I think he ended up moving on, as well as the director of curriculum instruction, who was blown out unceremoniously because they were not transparent about data. We have been transparent with data since day one when I stepped into this district, whether it reflected positively on us or negatively on us. And if you've been coming to board meetings and been paying attention to the presentations, not to mention for example, the last board meeting we had, where our 3rd grade class was like a national champion, or a blue ribbon school, or rankings that are going up because of our AP enrollment and scores. It's very frustrating when we have these sort of positions out and they don't acknowledge the progress and the positive things that have been happening here. And maybe if I appear like I'm taking a little bit personally, I am, because it's not accurate. So I've never shied away. And even in this meeting, there have been multiple examples in this meeting where I've said, you know what? Yeah, like, I don't necessarily know if that's something that makes sense anymore. We'll take a look at it. Never shied away from evaluating practice, but I will defend the work that's been done here over the last 4 years. And if you don't believe me, just look at the data, because it's continued to go up. And, I have an opportunity to come into this high school on a daily basis and to interact with our students. I have news for you. They're not miserable. Talk to our kids, talk to our seniors. And it's like universally, I'm sure there's kids who don't have positive experiences here. But by and large, our kids enjoy their time at Holmdel High School, and we're not. Yeah, we are below some of the school districts, some of the high schools in terms of ranking. But go to Milburn High School, go to Princeton High School, and you see the kind of toxicity that exists with regard to competition, with regard to pressure. Our kids are pretty well adjusted. Our kids go to Ivies, they go to top tier colleges, and they leave us in pretty good mental health because we're not overburdening them. So I have to, if I were a year here, I wouldn't be offering such a full-throated defense of what we're doing, but I feel obliged to do so. I feel I owe it to the people that have been laboring in this district for the last 4.5 years to make it better.
I just want to say that I think that like when I speak of like my nephew who again just finished that first year of Notre Dame, it's also coming from somebody who that was his personality, who was taking the APs as a freshman and like ended senior year with 8 APs. Like that's his personality and that was his track. Where I have my senior that graduates tomorrow literally removed herself from AP classes freshman year and only took AP classes now as a senior because she was like, I don't want that rigor to start. Like, and she ramped it up throughout her stage. And then I have my next freshman who's, in class support classes, but is ramping herself up to take, AP APES, which is environmental science, right? So she's going to be in class support except for one, like an actual AP class. I think it's what they make it. And like those kids that want to go to those more Ivy League schools, they are the kids that have done it for the 4 years to make it rigorous so that it is easier when they get to, right? Like that they do feel that way and so well prepared.
Can I just,
yeah, go ahead.
My comments were not in relation to the district as a whole at all. My kids, they love it here. That's why we're here. That's why we haven't gone to a private school. But they were they were a commentary on the 85% weighting, which I think is more in line with what happens at college than what should happen at high school. That's all. I was not like trying to take anything away. I actually pushed a button, but like.
No, I understand that, Ms. Ashkar, but these are changes when we look back, romantically on what Holmdel High School was in the past. We hear it all the time. But what did our past practices get us? They got us steadily declining rankings. They got us declining test scores. And I know it may seem haphazard and like we're just throwing darts up here as educational leaders and educators in terms of the decisions we're making, but we've been extremely thoughtful and deliberate about the way we made decisions as per the strategic action plan, which was informed by inclusive community feedback. And I don't believe it's happenstance that we've seen positive movement in our metrics because of it. It's not coincidence. And so it may seem that these things are indiscriminate or not right. And of course, as I've said, we'll always go back and reevaluate our practices, but we're improving because of the things we're doing. If we weren't, we wouldn't be improving. We would be like we were when I got here and things were, not particularly great. And our achievement was not particularly great. You look at our middle school math scores when I first got here. We had under 20% of our middle schoolers showing proficiency on math. I mean, that's in the general 7th and 8th grade math classes. That's where we were. That's what our previous practices that we romanticized got us.
I was just going to say quickly, I think that we also, I am kudos to the administrative, the leadership team and everything. And I'm kind of echoing what Dr. Cascone said, because we also have such a huge contingent of the community that is like rankings. You don't get there with this rigor. So they're well prepared. It's easy, whatever that phrase is, they are so well prepared because it's rigorous and because our rankings continue. They're related. You can't have growing rankings without the rigor that we have here.
I just don't care about rankings or test scores. I care about my kids.
There are a lot of people who are so focused on rankings.
I think like the Board of Ed should prioritize the experience of the kids, not think about as much about rankings and test scores. But
I am all for a well-balanced kid and education.
And I've said publicly, because believe me, Ms. Ashkar, I bristled at the idea of rankings as well. I was hit with that pretty hard when I came in. And my belief on rankings is that, and I think it's what Mrs. Lopresti is saying, is if we have good practices, the rankings will naturally go up, right? But I mean, you had mentioned, what was it? You had mentioned a school. that was, oh, Rumson, you mentioned they were above us in rankings. So, I mean, you had mentioned that yourself. And when you look at if we're looking at the U.S. News and World Report rankings, the main factor that contributes to those rankings, and it's pretty much a singular factor, and it's called the College Readiness Index. And it is the percentage of your students by the time they graduate that have taken at least one AP class and have gotten a 3 on it. That is probably the most impactful criteria or metric within those rankings. And when you look at, the schools that are above us, and I'm not talking about high tech because I don't compare us to high tech or any of the other magnet schools that are taking the best and brightest from the surrounding municipalities.
Test into.
It's apples and oranges. So if we just look at those comprehensive high schools, they have a higher college readiness index. So ours, I think, is now in the low 60s. You look at places like Milburn or Princeton or West Windsor, Plainsboro, any of the ones that are above us, their college readiness index is like 80, in the 80s, mid 80s, usually not really higher than that. And I've always said, like, we're sending 95% of our kids to 4-year colleges. I do think 95% of our kids should take an AP class, at least one. They should have some experience with it. But I agree with you. We absolutely shouldn't be driven by rankings, but unfortunately or fortunately or whatever, either way, it is a priority for a segment of our population, but it doesn't drive what we do. But I do think when it goes up, I mean, it is something to celebrate on some level.
And I voiced, like, I get the appeal of APs. I get that. But I mean, let high school kids take high school courses. Like, why is that the basis for a ranking if you're not? I don't know.
Well, I can tell you that we have, like, when we talked about eliminating AP courses for freshmen, which we currently offer, we offer AP World History and we offer AP Environmental Science. There was a significant outcry that we did not do that. So while you may feel that way, there's a significant percentage of our parent population that want their kids to take AP classes as freshmen, and they do great, by the way. But not for nothing,
Again,
our freshmen tend to do really
known,
well.
But
which is
I'm
amazing.
not a rankings chaser.
I mean, just to bring it around though, like, you can still encourage kids to take AP classes without the 85% weighting. Like, I feel like that's a completely separate issue that should be revisited. Whether or not you care about rankings, you can still get kids into AP classes,
100%.
still do well. So,
I mean, I made a note when you mentioned Ms. Ashkar that we have a new C&I director coming in. She's going to be very busy. But I agree. I mean, I think that, that's those weightings. It's definitely something we can look at. It's not an exact science, right? And I think that's been in place now for 2 or 3 years. So why not look at it? I think that's one of the things we don't do well in education is periodically we do something, and then, like the exemptions, it just becomes something that rolls over year after year, and we never take a look at it and say, how is this working? How do our kids feel about it? How do the teachers feel about it? So I'm glad you mentioned it, notwithstanding me bristling a little bit, but I have to defend our district. I have to defend our high school because I know.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. But I wanted to just mention real quick, because I know we're going to go into executive session, but, and I don't want to but I wanted to shout out the Holmdel High School, Dr. Harretz and Ms. Rosatello, because, the seniors, it's something that started a few years ago, which was Decision Day. We had that last week at the high school, and it's really for the families. It's like we do there was a breakfast, and then we moved into in one gym, and then we moved into the other gym, and it had like stuff set up for like this, so that to take pictures for social media. And it was all done by the school for the seniors. And it was just a wonderful day. We had the new Hornet out, new Hornet mascot was out for pictures. And it was just a really lovely event that, like, all of my friends, no other high school does that. Like, just for so and open to all the seniors. And just my husband made a note, and I mean, we talked about it, and I agreed, but I wanted to make sure to mention, like, it was so basically everyone shows up repping their college that their kid's going to, and whatnot, and the amount of different schools that our kids are going to was absolutely crazy. Like, I mean, of course, like, we have like 14 kids going to Rutgers. My kid's one of them. But everything from Washington to Texas, Florida, Maine. Like, I mean, it was just, I mean, yes, Harvard, Princeton. But it was really nice to see so many schools represented in just a nice event done by the high school. So.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, kudos to that. I think this is the second or third year of it.
Yeah, I don't know. My
It's been
older
good.
son didn't have it. so
Yeah,
this
no,
is
I
great.
think it started with my son's class, and kudos to Dr. Harretts. And I think the new one that I saw today, we never had all those senior signs. That's a first, so that's
That
good.
was PTSO.
Yeah,
That was a donation from PTSO.
Good job.
The signs around the high school.
That's a
Yeah,
first. That's very
those are beautiful.
So congratulations to the SATs folks that are going to graduate tomorrow at 3 o'clock. High school at 7 o'clock. And I believe they will have the project graduation walk probably around 8:30-ish, something like that, 9 o'clock. By the time they get to the village.
9:15 they
9:15
leave
the village.
the
Oh, leave the high
complex.
school. Okay. Be at the high school.
We're monitoring the weather. It's not currently looking very good.
So
Has it changed?
Yeah.
I just got an update from OEM that they said there's going to be heavy winds and possible thunderstorms from like 1 to 8. So
fun times.
Do we still have, we still do have executive session?
yes, ma'am.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, congratulations to the students tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have good weather. We are
Beautiful.
done for the night. We have to go into the executive session.
So we didn't make a
We will
motion?
not be
Is
coming
that
back.
what we do?
We will make a motion. Any more comments, sir? Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to go back to executive session.
Well, that's what we have to do. I make
I
the
make-
motion to go
I'll-
back. in.
No, that's what it is.
Okay.
I'm moving it. Second.
There you go. Oh,
There we go.
all right,
But
we're going.
we're not coming back
We're not
to,
coming back. We will adjourn from there.
Yeah.
And taking no action.
aye.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.